We'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd ask if everybody could please take a seat. So, with that, I hereby call this meeting of the King George County Planning Commission to order. I hereby invoke the rules and procedures previously adopted by this commission and the Board of Supervisors, allowing for electronic participation by some members with a quorum physically present. This action is taken as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the governor's orders regarding limitations of gatherings and staying in place during a disaster. Electronic participation is encouraged and pursuant to the governor's emergency orders. Masks and social distancing will be required for those physically present. If you choose to be physically present, you will be screened by the authorized staff for signs and symptoms of illness. Based on the results of that screening and or the number of members and staff, certain physical attendees may be denied entry. Following members are physically present, and I see everyone except for Mr. Williams. And we believe that he is on his way. With that said, I'd like to ask the clerk to include this statement in the minutes and note for the record that we do have a quorum. With that said, I would ask that anybody who can stand and please recite with us the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Patterson, would you do us the honor of leading us in the
This conference will now be recorded.
Dear Lord, let us pray. Thank you for our wonderful evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to serve King George County. Help guide us and make the best decisions possible for our constituents and citizens of King George. Thank you. Protect us. Keep us safe this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now, before we jump right into the agenda, I do have one special deviation for the evening, and I'd like to ask Mr. Hudson if he would please stand up and socially distance meet me. So this is kind of a good night for Mr. Hudson, a bad night for the county, because we are losing him to retirement. So we do want to say thank you for everything. It's a very small token of our appreciation, but I'd like to read it. In recognition of outstanding service presented to J. Bradley Hudson in appreciation for his 20 years of dedication to the citizens of King George County, his unwavering commitment to protect and promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of King George County is an excellent example of public service. J. Bradley Hudson most recently served as the King George County Planning Commissioner as the Director of Community Development for the past 3 years. His outstanding service to King George County is unparalleled and greatly appreciated by each member of the Planning Commission. I want to present this from all of us and just say thank you for everything you've done. And we're going to miss you, sir. And you can come anytime you want. So feel free to come. It don't cost nothing to come. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. So now on to public comment. Next item on the agenda. So this is public comment period for anything other than the agenda items that we have tonight. So anyone wishes to speak or address the commission, please come forward, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. And again, this public comment period is not for any of the public hearings for this evening. So with that, I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience that would just like to come speak on anything in general, please feel free to do so now. And seeing that there are no takers, we're going to go ahead and move on to approval of the meeting minutes from the 8 September 2020 meeting. And I'll just ask that the commission review them if you've not already, and please let me know if there's any issues on any given page, and we will address those. I'll ask if there are any comments.
I have one. On page 6, on board comments, I made an inquiry in response to a draft proposed affidavit of satisfaction of all liens, which the affidavit shown to the commission only reflected real estate tax and did not refer to other possible lien-bearing conditions, waste nuisance fees, as specifically mentioned in the amendment.
So I'm looking, if I'm looking correctly, sir, the bullet that says Mr. DeCourta inquired if 1.7.1A can state the applicant paid in full?
Right, I was referring to the proposed instrument or document as an example, and it only referred to delinquent real estate taxes, and I suggested that it should be inclusive of all the lien-bearing consequences enumerated in the proposed amendment. I was not referring to 171. I was referring to the instrument the ECD proposed to as a affidavit or certification of satisfaction.
So your recommended correction would be that we make it a more broader statement, not specific or referring to that
That
specific
the
citation.
proposed instrument,
Okay.
the documentation of satisfaction or certification of satisfaction includes all the conditions mentioned in the amendment, 171.
Okay.
I wasn't referring to the 171, I was referring to the
Overall, gotcha. Jackie,
Paperwork.
can we incorporate those in too, please? Thank you. Anything else from anyone? If not, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes with the revisions as discussed.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes with the stated corrections.
Motion's been made.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And was anybody absent last time?
I was.
That's
I
right.
abstain.
One abstention. For the record, motion passes. Thanks, Jed Brady. Next item on the agenda is the Community Planning Liaison Officer, Naval Support Activity South Potomac. Mr. Dines, do we have that individual online? Was it Gail?
It's Gail Kinson.
Gail Kenson? I believe, sir. Are either of the callers on hold, Ms. Kenson from Naval Support Activity South Potomac? Okay.
Didn't hear a yes.
If not, we will then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public hearings. So we'll start those with the,
Chairman Parker?
yes,
Did you do public comment, general public comment?
yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So we will go to the public hearings. King George County Planning Commission will now hold a public hearing, which has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding the FY 21 to 25 Capital Improvements Program. Capital Improvements Program is a 5-year Program for capital expenditures in King George County. The Planning Commission is responsible for forwarding a recommendation to the King George Board of Supervisors. Thank you. We'll first hear from County Administrator, Dr. Young, then from each department in order of the spreadsheet. Once each department has made a request, we'll open the floor for public comment. Dr. Young, the floor is yours. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. I know that I've taken a lot of actions for tonight that are without precedence. Normally, we don't have the county administrator speak first for the capital improvement program. In addition, I'm sure that you all have reviewed the 5-year CIP plan, and I'm happy to talk about the actions that I've taken, specifically adding a CAO recommendation. And again, I would like to remind you all that it is not it's a recommendation. Of course, the Planning Commission retains its right to capture whatever projects they want to approve or recommend forward to the Board of Supervisors. But the reason why I took these actions without precedent is because we are currently living in unprecedented times. I'm sure that everybody has watched the news and everybody hears about the recession that's happening nationwide. Well, that reality is hitting us right here in King George County. If you had looked at your board packets, I'm sure that Heather had included what we call tonnage reports, one labeled 2019 and one labeled 2020. And what our tonnage report is a measure of the monies that are raised or generated from the landfill. One portion for waste management, then one portion for King George County. And the reason why that's particularly relevant for tonight's discussion is, as many of you all already know, the CIP is not funded by real estate tax dollars. Rather, it is funded directly from proceeds from the landfill. So if you look at page 3 of the handwritten document that I provided to Heather, that's included in your board packet, you can see some numbers that are pretty stunning. Specifically, and I'm happy to walk you all through it. But what I did on this handwritten piece of paper was break down calendar year 2019 revenue versus calendar year 2020 revenue. And we broke those down into quarters. Where did we stand in 2019 first quarter versus where we stood in 2020 first quarter? So understanding that we earned $5 a ton and understanding that the landfill has been closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's closed on the weekends and they're not realizing that business traffic. In 2019 quarter 1, tonnage was 407,838 tons in the first quarter. Times 5 tons equal $2,039,190 of revenue that was generated for the county in the first revenue. In 2020, quarter 1 tonnage, 423,442 tons times $5 a ton equated $2,117,210, or $78,020 more in revenue that we realized in the first quarter of 2020. Now that's telling because prior to this pandemic being identified and prior to the Commonwealth going into phase 1 and the recession impact the business community, King George County was booming and it was reflected in our landfill, and we was on track to have a especially healthy year. But then as you go into the second quarter of 2019, quarter 2 tonnage was 430,631 tons times $5 a ton, generated $2,153,155. Quarter 2 of 2020, the tonnage sat at 303,767 tons times $5 a ton, which equated to proceeds of $1,518,835, a difference of negative $634,320. Then, when I provided you all the report for the board report, the most current month I had at that point was July. 2019 July tonnage equated $172,456. 456 tons times $5 a ton, or $862,280 of revenue. 2020 July tonnage is down to 125,563 tons at $5 a ton, equates to $627,815. $627,815, or a difference of negative $234,465. So as of the July date that we had put together the packets and created the spreadsheet, we was already at a difference of negative $790,765 of lost revenue. To be honest with you, I'm kind of scared to pick up the books right now. So prior to the board meeting, we are going to take another look at where we currently stand to date for November, but I can assure you that the numbers aren't getting any better because the gates haven't opened and there's no traffic that's coming in and that's bringing us that tonnage. So how does that impact us for the CIP? Well, that's how we ended up at the spreadsheet that's before you all today. And that's how you all ended up with a recommendation from the county administrator prior to it coming before the planning commission and prior to it coming before the board of supervisors, because I thought that it was the responsible thing to do to raise a red flag and explain to both governing bodies that the county, at least financially on the capital side of the house, is in trouble. And it's decisions that you all are going to make in your recommendations tonight and decisions that the board of supervisors are going to make at their subsequent meeting when they consider the CIP that's going to either help us to mitigate the impact of the recession or if we are going to continue to run the county in the red on the capital side. If you will note, you'll see some other colored font where you had a staff priority and the state's approved for the tenant center restoration. Then you see the planning commission approved it. What that reflects is that these are actually projects that you all already approved last year. However, then you see where the county administrator recommendation, it's noted it as approved but hold. The reason why you see that for this specific project and for projects like the King George Elementary School, because once we had hit the pandemic in March and realized that businesses were closing up, sales tax was down, as well as transient tax. We made the executive's decision that, hey, all major capital projects are suspended, tabled, until we can figure out what this pandemic is going to look like, what this recession is going to look like, and more importantly, what the county is going to look like after recover from this recession. So those projects are approved. We're maintaining them on our radar and maintaining them on our CIP. However, we're cautiously watching the books and watching our revenue reports before we move forward with making such large expenditures that I don't know if they're exactly of the highest priority. Definitely, we want to make sure that we get our school roofs and everything completed, and we want to get our tennis court resurfaced, but we feel it prudent to make sure that we maintain healthy fund balances in the event that this recession is prolonged. So that's the thought process that I wanted to provide to you all. Now, happy to entertain any questions before going into the administration projects.
Dr. Young, the N's, is this in the blue? Are they for no, or what is the N?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm glad you brought that up. As you all are aware, the 2020/2021 is the capital budget versus when you start taking it out over the span of 5 years, then it's called the CIP. Well, I'm recommending a capital budget for 2020 in this blue font column. And what I'm recommending is, if it has an N next to it, I recommend that you all consider not recommending it and the board not approving it until we can see more healthier revenues that's generated by the landfill.
And then there's one for the circuit court that's approved bond. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
That's just for administrative purposes and record keeping purposes. The courthouse was already approved. It was approved last year. So we're just tracking it because we want to make sure that we're tracking the monies over the next 3 years, which is what we estimate the courthouse is going to take to be completed. And we're just making sure that we're tracking how the bond is going to work. Hey, we need to spend this much money on the bond this year and this much money on the bond next year.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So on the ones that are approved hold, those will be first in line for funding after the current approved ones are executed?
That's what I would assume. Like I said, it's really no need for consideration by the planning commission. You all approved it last year. So once we can get healthier again, we'll turn the projects back on, and it just depends on the complexity, which ones are coming down the pipeline, but they will be completed. Yes, sir.
Dr. Young, I guess obviously the lack of influx into the landfill is probably prolonging the life a bit. Well, what is the projected lifespan of the landfill as it currently stands?
We estimate that there's approximately 27 years left on the land.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 27. 27
Left.
years left, that's correct.
Left. Left as a result of the expansion that the board approved and Waste Management crafted 3 years ago. Yes, would increase the vertical height, and
Okay.
we got the air permit.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question to that would be like this, what are we thinking about when we have to wean ourselves off of that revenue? But I guess it's not an imminent concern right now, so.
Oh, it's an imminent concern, Mr. Chair. It's something that we're already thinking about.
Okay.
And we're having the discussions with the board of supervisors. Actually, we've had that discussion with the board of supervisors last year about how the revenue from the landfill is so leveraged that if there's any other major capital project that's coming down the pipeline, we either got to utilize our fund balances to cash fund it, or we got to seek property tax increases, for major projects. So
Is there ever an opportunity to renegotiate the cut that the county gets for it? I mean, obviously $5 now isn't going to be what $5 20 years from now is going to be. Is that a rolling increase that goes along with like a inflationary adjustment?
yeah, it would seem intuitive that you could always return to the table to renegotiate the rate, but the reality is the landfill market is so competitive, not in the Commonwealth, we're talking nationally.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. It's very hard, as you all can imagine, to convince in this environmental and political realm that states or localities are getting landfills approved anymore. Very, very difficult. So with that limited capacity, it creates a very creative, very competitive market where you put our partner, Waste Management, in a position where you're trying to raise the tonnage on them, extra quarter or 50 cents or 75 cents. What they tell me is, hey, well, that means that some people are going to drive down the street for, to save that quarter or save that. It seems like 25 cents is not a lot of money, but when you're talking the tonnage of these numbers, those numbers add up, and companies really take a look at that on their bottom line.
I guess my only other question would be with regard to the roof replacement on the school. I know that's been on this for a long, long time. Is that, is putting that off, is the trade-off of putting that off going to cause more cost down the road, or?
We don't think so. And I do know that that's a very important project that's been put off. The only reason why we're not really, scrambling to turn it back on is because we know that schools are out, they're going through virtual learning. And it is going to be one of the number one priorities that we pursue as soon as everything turns back on. I'm estimating that we may take another hard look at our capital projects at the close of the year because there's actually two situations going on. We have the recession on one side of the house, but then on the other side of the house, the county is going through a credit rating review, trying to secure financing for the courthouse. So naturally, they're looking in your bank account, they're looking at how financially healthy you are. So keeping that money in the savings account, $1.2 million just for 3 more months and get the funding for the courthouse is especially helpful for us securing our bonds, securing our credit rating.
Right. Okay.
I have more of a comment than anything else, but the economics of raising the price. So if you have a limited number of places you can go, and if you have a limited number of space that you can go height, then by raising the price and waiting, your future value would be higher. In other words, instead of it being 27 years or whatever, maybe you have 40 years, but you also have 40-year pricing then on that.
Yes, sir.
It seems like the higher prices and the slower fill would benefit the county if we didn't need the money right now.
Yeah, and definitely if there was an opportunity to capitalize on the market and the limited inventory, then yeah, that'll be great, and it's something that we would love to visit down the years. But the reality at the moment is that it's a competitive market, and the buyers have the choice to take it to North Carolina, take it to Virginia, or take it again down the street to another landfill if necessary. And if that's going to save them 35 cents per ton that they're traveling down the road, then they're going to take it down the road.
Any other questions?
I had one other question. You had on here $624,000 for bus replacement. The buses aren't running this year, as far as I know, correct?
That's correct. And we considered that. However, we do know that once you get off track with, our two programs like, running school buses, now sooner or later you're going to end up running yourself into potential of having to play catch up. So we decided that, hey, at the end of the day, we can afford the program. The program's working to get that turnover in the fleet inventory. And it was my recommendation, again, mine alone, to continue to maintain that program because it works for the schools.
How many buses is that?
6?
6.
I believe 6.
So just for my
Thank you.
education, is there a standing order in place for these replacement buses? I mean, I can remember a few years ago, there was a general desire to sort of get into a regular routine. But how long does it take to get delivery on a bus once you order it? And are you like ordering this year's for next year's buses? Is that what's going on?
No, so I think that there's a standing inventory for buses. It's not like when you're ordering a fire truck or if you're ordering an ambulance where it takes 7 months to a year because it's a specialized piece of equipment and it takes customization in order to fill that order. Whereas I believe, and I can speak with Dr. Benson, but I'm pretty certain that it's a standing inventory of buses and it's not that fast. I mean, it's not a far of a turnaround to get those equipment into the inventory.
Okay, thank you.
And again, my recommendation on the buses was based off of, again, we put this packet together or the spreadsheets together in July, August, and we didn't have as much clarity on the remainder of the school year as we do now, now that it's October. So again, that's the planning commission's decision on if they want to move forward with that program or not. But it was my recommendation based off of the information we had at the moment.
So we're not moving forward we are moving forward on the bus replacement, but we're not moving forward on the ambulance replacement program, and that's more safety of life and limb.
That's correct.
What's the rationale for that?
That's correct. Actually, that decision was made off of, and not even made off of, it was actually suggested to me by Chief Moody himself, and he stated, hey, our inventory is healthy. We've been having these discussions about the financial impact that this pandemic is having to the county with our directors since March. He understands that we have to tighten our belt, and he recommended that, hey, we can go one more year without, replacing the ambulance.
Dr. Young, I have a question. I'm sure you're pursuing other avenues to make up for the deficit that we're under. My question is, are those avenues being pursued just as heavily as us making these cuts, I guess, or reevaluating these projects?
Yes, sir. Are you referring to revenue or expenditures?
Revenue.
Yes, sir. And the story is dire simply on this side of the house with landfill revenue. But to be honest, on the other side of the house with general taxes, it hasn't been as bad or as dearth of a story that we would have thought. We actually saw sales tax come in above projections. I don't know if it was because all the restaurants were closed, but people were making runs on the stores and buying goods and supplies. I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely not as dire of a situation as we're dealing with on the capital side of the house.
Any further questions? If not, Dr. Young, thank you so much for coming out.
Now, Mr. Chair, if I may, I run through my suggested projects real quick.
Oh, yeah. Did we want to do that, or the department heads here, or if you want to? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Please feel free.
Just real quick, I was going to review the schools, and I think we talked about the schools buses pretty comprehensively. And then under administration, we recommend the approval of the monies for the Fairview Beach Riverbank Stabilization Project. That project is monies that is being dedicated to address the deterioration of the Fairview Beach coastline. It should be noted that this project is actually was actually approved by FEMA as a grant. So FEMA has asked that, according to the grant requirements, county pays for costs along the way during the phases of the project, and the county actually is going to be reimbursed by FEMA for those expenditures. So those monies are needed up front now, but it's not going to affect our fund balance because we expect to recoup that funding at the completion of the Fairview Beach project.
But that project has not come through the whole 5-year CIP cycle. It kind of came online.
Yes, sir. It was opportunistic based on the fact that we didn't know that we were going to win the grant. In fact, we didn't even know about the grant until one of the members of the Service Authority Board of Directors, who happens to be an engineer, talked to the U.S. Corps of Engineers, and they referred them to FEMA for funding. And he actually took the time out to put the grant and everything together and got approved for the grant. And we just decided, hey, we better strike fast in order to leverage our monies against this grant money.
Guess we can call that capitalizing on an opportunity.
We can call it that. If the planning commission wants to approve it, we can call it that. So that's for the administration. Circuit Court, we talked about that. That's currently a bond. And those are all the projects that are coming out of the administrative offices.
Wow.
I'll stand by for any questions.
On the IT, the wireless access points, what is, can you go into that a little bit more?
Yes, sir. Well, the rest of the project, the department heads are here, to include Chris Dines, and he has been invited to speak on the IT project, so I don't want to steal his thunder.
Okay.
I'll stand by for any more questions, Mr. Chair.
Any additional questions for Dr. Young? All right.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you, sir. This time we'll ask each department head to come down or address the Planning Commission if you're here. And we will start with Chris Clark.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I realize as an oversight, you all do not have my presentation in your packet, so I will forward it to Ms. Fall in the morning, and she can forward it to you because there'll be slides up above your head that you're not going to be able to see. Tonight I bring Parks and Recreation's updated capital improvement plan to you. A number of our facilities are beginning to show their age and are in need of maintenance and renovation improvements, including Barnesfield Park and the Citizen Center, which have both been in operation since the 1980s. Conversely, we also have newly acquired property adjacent to Barnesfield Park in the form of a 166-acre parcel for park expansion and a new 2-acre home site currently slated to become a museum. Here are our requests for the next 5 years. Approved by both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, the King George Tennis Center still awaits the funds to be appropriated to reconstruct the facility. These are the only public tennis courts in the county and home to the King George High School tennis teams. The coaches have expressed concerns that the Battlefield District may not allow competition on these courts due to safety concerns with the cracking. Additionally, the renovation will include pickleball lines, which will increase programming opportunities for Parks and Recreation. Barnesfield Park has nearly doubled in size thanks to the Harry Nice Thomas Mack Middleton Route 301 Bridge project. 166 acres to the north of the park and a 2-acre home site on the river were acquired in December 2019 as mitigation for the 4 acres lost by the county and the Virginia Tourism Commission. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee has created a draft master plan that would be brought to public feedback in fiscal year 23. Design work would be done also that year, and redevelopment work is recommended in fiscal years 24 and 25. Proposed improvements include the build-out of Wayside Park, additional ball fields in the new Barnesfield, and a bathhouse on the Barnesfield property near Wayside Park. Sealston Sports Complex is our most popular park for travel teams and Parks and Recreation soccer. This fall, we have 10 rentals a week for baseball and softball. King George Little League is on site, as well as KG United Soccer. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Parks and Recreation Soccer was canceled this year. The use of the picnic pavilion has increased as groups look for outdoor venues to host meetings and gatherings. We propose adding a playground in fiscal year '21 and a sand volleyball court in fiscal year '22. Staying at Sealston, with increased field use comes an increased need for more practice and play times. Without lights, we are unable to offer more times due to darkness. At this time, Hunter Field has the only lights in the county that serve football and soccer that Parks and Recreation has free access to. Time there was completely booked prior to COVID-19. We hope to add lights to one soccer field and one additional baseball and softball field for $350,000 respectively in FY22 and FY23. Sitting empty at SEDELBROOKS Junior Park is the old animal shelter. Master naturalists, master gardeners, the co-op extension office, and Parks and Recreation are looking to redevelop this facility into an outdoor education center. The request for CIP funds is to be used as matching funds to supplement grants and awards in FY22. The Citizen Center is home to the Parks and Recreation Department. Over the past 15 years, repairs and maintenance have been deferred. Current upgrading needs are to replace the ceiling and lighting throughout the facility. By moving from fluorescent to LED lighting, there will be a savings in electrical costs. The center divider wall is nearing at the end of its life, and it's original equipment from the 1980s. If it were to fail, then the ability to divide the facility and host 2 events at once would be lost. The sidewalk and ADA ramp are wearing and do not offer smooth walking and rolling surfaces. This is a priority need for the department in fiscal year '21. Park safety, changes in safety codes and the age of equipment has led to the need to replace bleachers at Barnesfield Park, modify fencing heights at both Sealston and Barnesfield, and add dugout roofs at those parks as well. These upgrades will limit the liability of the county in regards to baseball and softball. In FY21, we request $227,500. In FY22, there's a need to upgrade lighting at Barnesfield Park Field A to meet current safety codes with appropriate foot candles of light. This $600,000 would renovate Field A and add lights to Field B. Currently, King George Parks and Recreation holds an MOU with the school board to utilize school facilities during non-school hours. This limits the majority of our program to evening and weekends due to the lack of facility space. Now, due to COVID-19, we have been limited in which programs we can bring back, as school safety protocols are set by the Virginia High School League and are more restrictive than other governing bodies. This need was noted the need for a recreation center was noted in the 2017 needs analysis done by Parks and Recreation. The Infrastructure Advisory Committee will be reporting out to the Board of Supervisors next month with plans to reuse various buildings in the county, but Park and Recreation has had their eye on revitalizing the old middle school for some time. Renovation of the site in FY24 for $7.5 million with $250,000 in planning work to be completed in FY23 will allow gymnastics, the shooting clubs, wrestling, and karate all to find home in a modern space. The dog park. In the 2017 needs analysis done by the department, it was noted that an off-leash dog park was a high priority. Currently, citizens will run their dogs off-leash at various parks, which leads to fear amongst other park visitors, dog waste being left on sports fields, and complaints to both Parks and Recreation and the Sheriff's Office. Creation of a safe, responsible location near the center of the county will be a benefit to dog owners and non-owners alike. This is an FY22 project. Finally, built in the early 2000s, the playground at Barnesfield Park will need replacement in the coming years, as 20 years is the useful life for such a structure. For FY25, $125,000 replacement is noted. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sorry, the recreation center, did you say that was the old middle school?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's interesting. Any other questions, Mr. Clark? Mr. Clark, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
And we had, so Dr. Young, you addressed the schools, the administration, and the court. Did you want to have any other comments on those, or? Okay. This time we then go on to Mr. Chris Dines. Chris, if you'd like to come down and address your area, or if you'd like me to go to the next agenda item and you can come down in a moment, or? Yeah, you can just- No rush. No, you don't.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So I have 4 projects, but one was prioritized. Dr. Young prioritized things for us with the budget crunch that he just talked to you about. So I'll go quickly with my projects. We have the county fiber project that was part of the redundancy project that we did for the county's communications and internetworking, that we were going to have all of our buildings connected, but we're going to hold off on those last 2, which would be the companies 2 and 3, because of the budget situation. But it is important because we like to have the fire rescues company 1, all their servers will be replicated to that group of extra company 2 and 3, just in case there's something that happens. We have the student library, solid waste and recycling, WAPs, cameras, and cellular gateways. Dr. Young and I kind of moved that to our CARES Act funding for the Smoot Library because we wanted to make sure that our citizens and their kids could use the library as a resource, since we have issues with broadband internet services here. So a lot of people are signing up and are using the library, because the library is pretty much through this whole COVID has been open to the public. So it's really good. So we actually have those through our CARES Act, and so we're going to be installing those within the next couple of weeks. And there'll be more stronger outdoor ones as well, so that the kids just want to come and sit in the car. If maybe the library is closed, they could do their work from their car. For solid waste and recycling, we wanted cameras and cellular gateways so that they can record and access things that happened. There have been some instances that have gone on in the county at our convenience centers, so we want to make sure that we can get easy access so that Sheriff Giles and his deputies can do their investigations. For the countywide wire phone accessories that we have, that was just, to me, kind of a little bit of a luxury, because some of our offices wanted to be able to walk around their office and use wireless headsets and to interact with the public and not be caught away from their desk and not able to answer their phone. So they wanted to make sure, because there's been a lot, like Dr. Young said, a lot of our other offices, especially community development, have really been booming through all of this with business licenses, of their inspections. Like, I guess a lot of people at home, they have plenty of time to do their home projects. So that was just a luxury. So we can wait on those. And now the main thing we had that we need is the second year of our information management, which has our off-site servers in a guarded, secure site in Southern Virginia. And that's where we replicate all of our main servers, so that if something happens in the county and the county is destroyed, our data is there and we can go there and work, and our workers can do their work from there. Also has the spam filter, the virtual machines, as I said, the monitoring, the patching, the antivirus, the web filtering, for desktop deployment services for antivirus, filtering, and patch managers as well. And that was $117,103.56. So for now, we're going to stick with that one, and we'll get with Dr. Young next year, and we'll try to work and see if we can get these other things done if the economy comes back okay. I'll take any questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Dunn?
Okay, thank you.
We always appreciate your support, sir, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Seriously.
No problem at all. That's what I'm here for.
All right. Ms. Hall?
Chairman Parker, I have a presentation. If you wouldn't mind moving on to Sheriff Giles so
Sure.
that we can keep the meeting.
Sheriff Giles. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. Good evening, Chairman and members of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and present in reference to the radio communication systems upgrade for this capital improvements this evening. The current radio system that we're using right now between the fire department and the sheriff's offices is a VHF high frequency system, and it works at 150 megahertz core. And that system itself is 20 years old today. The request for the systems upgrade is to go to 700 megahertz and a 700 megahertz trunking system. Some of the advantages to that would be talk groups. That would allow, from my office, it would allow CID to have their own little group. Animal control could have their own little group. Patrol could have their own little group without stepping on each other while we're trying to do our jobs out there. 700 megahertz is much better coverage throughout the county. There are dead spots in the county now where literally deputies are licking their fingers and holding it up in the air and trying to talk while they're out there. So 700 megahertz is definitely a better coverage. The interoperability with the surrounding jurisdictions. Most of our jurisdictions are going to 700 megahertz to include Maryland. That would allow the fire department to run a mutual aids, to have communications with them, sheriff's offices if we needed it as well. And the other advantage would allow the future additions of service authority and the schools to all be part of that system. And being part of that system, if we had a county emergency, as it stands right now, we would actually physically need somebody from that organization beside us with a radio so we could communicate timely. On this system here, we could communicate timely with all those organizations without a missing a beat. So that's one of the advantages. Back in 2018, Sheriff Dempsey, retired now, requested this project for the 2022-2023 budget year. If you're looking at the schedule right now, it's scheduled for 2024, 2025. And as you can see from the handout that Heather gave you, the radio equipment that we have now, the end of life for that is 2020. Some of them, a couple of the things will extend to 2021, but as it stands right now, end of life is 2020. We've been in communications with Motorola, and they're offering what they call a lease in the rears for 2 years. So, which that means that the $8,088,795 that we've put down, which is a preliminary budget cost, and we're still working on trying to firm that up. It'd be a little bit more, obviously, because that was a 2018 projection. That would allow us to start the project July of 2021 and not have to pay anything up until July of 2024. So that's an advantage there. With that, with our system losing end of life in 2020, from this point forward, we're basically using the Band-Aid system to be able to fix it after 2020. If things go bad, they're going to have to search out parts and stuff like that to get our system up and running. So it would just definitely help us if we move this project from necessary to urgent as well. I just, it's definitely an urgent system to get going. And if we do get that 700 megahertz down the road, we can definitely phase in those other two organizations to help us out. So Thank you for your consideration in this matter, and I'll stand by for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. Is any questions for Sheriff Giles?
On Motorola's program, the pricing's the same even though you're doing the payment later? Is there a significant price difference, or is it?
No, it'll stay the same as far as I understand it.
Okay.
Whatever price we end up starting with.
And that would allow us to communicate. Stafford, Spotsylvania, all those guys are on that frequency also?
Yes.
Okay.
What is it now? It's not,
We're
700, but what are the megahertz being on now?
150. And it's a VHF high frequency system now. So we're jumping to, we'd like to jump to 700, which obviously covers more area.
Wow. Any additional questions? Okay. Sheriff Giles, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Hudson.
Saul?
Chris, can you bring up our presentation, please?
Yes.
Department of Community Development's CIP request for fiscal year 21. Next slide. Next slide. Quality customer service is the driving force within our department. While every member of community development strives to provide citizens of the county with the best quality assistance, our current programming system is the root of many questions and concerns. These questions are just a few that we receive on a day-to-day basis. What's the status of my permit? When was my septic system last pumped? Can I apply for my permit online? Who's the contractor on the job, etc. Next slide. Our current system is the Bright AS400 system, which is extremely outdated and very limited. The current permitting system contains building permit history since 2004 and does not account for planning and zoning submittals. New businesses and development are also not tracked by the AS400. Permitting history is not accessible to the public or other departments. AS400 does not track plan review status, provide status updates to applicants. All inspections are required to be scheduled by phone. Inspection results are not available until the end of the business day when the inspector returns to the office. The current system does not allow tracking of septic pump out requirements set forth in the county zoning ordinance and is unable to integrate with online plan review. If the Department of Community Development maintains the use of the current program, all documents and submittals will continue to be tracked in multiple programs and locations to include the AS400, Excel, written logs, and paper parcel files. Next slide. Unicity 5 is a software that offers a variety of features and uses that would enhance the capability of the Department of Community Development. Municity system would also enhance our department's customer service by providing common information more efficiently without having to rely on our paper files. Municity 5 is a cloud-based multi-platform program used by building, planning, and zoning departments. This program allows users to operate with greater efficiency and flexibility. The Municity system would also allow for all parcel history to be combined into one user-friendly program. Next slide. Unicity allows many users as needed. With online access, citizen can log into a public-facing portal to view permit updates, plan review, inspection status, parcel history, and more. Full tracking and scheduling of inspections, including checklists, documents, pictures. The Unicity mobile allows users to interact directly with an enabled device. Inspectors would have the ability to submit and upload inspection results right from the project site. Ability to integrate with the GIS mapping system to pull up information on any parcel in our locality. This will allow our department and public to access each parcel's history by clicking on the parcel through GIS. This will provide copies of every permit, variance, proffer, division, etc. that has been submitted for that parcel. Unicity Mobile can be accessed from any compatible smart device, would allow inspectors to speak in inspection results and comments. Mobile would also provide the ability to issue violations on site. When violations are spotted, you can generate a violation via mobile and create and print violation notice or follow-up reminder. You can also integrate with iCodes to add for your ready capability. Next slide. With GIS integration and ability to search by a parcel, Unicity allows a view of full parcel history to include building and zoning related projects, all combined into one location. You can view permits previously issued, permits pending approval, inspections conducted, stop work orders, violations, previous tenants and/or businesses that occupied that space, fees paid, contractors, license associated with the parcel, and more. The background of this slide is an overview of what that would look like. Next slide. Other features can pull abutting property owners and generate notifications to property owners. This feature would be useful when notifying those property owners for public hearings and projects conducted in that area. Septic info can be tracked through Unicity as well. This program should allow the ability to generate notices and maintain the septic pump out program. Reoccurring inspections can also be used for elevator inspections, certificates that are issued once a year to buildings that contain an elevator. Next slide. Bluebeam is also integrated with this system, which is a plan review software recently installed by Community Development. This integration will allow the permitting and site plan review process to be completely digital and provide citizens the opportunity to submit applications and plans online. This feature presented are only of a few among many that Unicity offers. Features highlighted will be most utilized and offer the most efficient change for our department. Next slide. The quote provided describes the base subscription license charges, which support the following: the annual software subscription, hosting, system access, and general code help desk, with a total subscription price the first year of $82,635 and an annual price of $29,000. Next slide. AS400, our existing system, will charge us $16,000 to export all of our current information. The cost for Unicity will be $82,635 and the annual budgeted cost of $29,000. The total CIP request for fiscal year 21 is $98,635.
Heather, who would be administering this software? The developer? Are you purchasing it from a developer or a vendor?
I'm sorry, sir, could you
Are you
repeat?
purchasing the software from a vendor or a developer?
A vendor.
A vendor. And who would administer and make sure that the data is updated on a daily basis? Who would handle the public-facing portion? Would that be IT, King George County IT, or the vendor?
So our staff is the one who inputs all of our information to our existing systems. Unicity would come in and train our staff so that we would be able to operate that on our own. But as well with that annual budget, Unicity will provide us certain updates, training, things of that nature.
So IT or GIS won't be involved with the software at all?
They will be involved, yes, sir.
But not in administering its daily use, just by inputting data, basically.
That's my
So
understanding.
how does the public-facing portion of the software work? Do they go through a portal to King George County or through the developer?
There will be a public-facing portal. So our portal will be unlimited, whereas the public-facing will be limited to how they can apply for a permit, how they can access their permit or inspection history, or if they were to log on to the GIS, they could click on that parcel of property and bring up any documents that are currently paper parcel files in our office.
Heather, I think you partially answered this question, but the 29,000 annually, what all does that include? I mean, I think you said partly training, and so what else would it include?
Right.
It's the subscription that's required. Unicity is also online as well if you would like to speak with them. So very similar to if you are paying for a website, it's the same subscription cost.
Okay.
But this is much more than just a website.
Right. Okay.
And are we currently integrated with the county tax parcel data, and would this be integrated with that or not?
That's our future hopes, is that this system could essentially expand into all of our departments.
So this is basically wide open to any member of the public? There's no way for recovering costs by subscriptions to the public, these common users, builders, developers?
I don't believe that it was our intentions to put forth a cost to the customers, but more as rather than calling our department or coming into our department and us having to go and physically pull a paper parcel, track down all the information from several different, it's a streamlined process that will make it easier on our staff as well as our public.
So you see this as a cost-saving measure? Is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
Any additional questions for Ms. Hall? Seeing as they're not, thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Chief Moody.
Members of the commission, good evening. Name is David Moody. I'm the County Fire and Rescue Chief. We have three projects before you this evening. The first one is our ambulance replacement program. And for some of the same reasons mentioned before by other speakers, we typically bring forward to you a unit that we replace every year. However, this year we took a real fine look at our operations. We took a look at the maintenance status of our existing units, and we made a decision that we could skip a year. A lot of that has to do to the financial constraints that we're currently in. Just a little overview of our operations. We have 7 units. One acts as a reserve, and excuse me. We transport to 5 facilities, that being Mary Washington Hospital, Spotsy Regional, Charles Regional Medical Center, and the freestanding ER. So we average approximately about 200,000 miles per year, and happy to answer any questions that you might have on that unit. Excuse me. The next project that we have is our fire rescue facilities. As you may know, we have our Dahlgren facility, where we have two separate buildings in Dahlgren. The first building was actually built back in 1954. And we have extremely and aggressively have grown out of that facility probably 20 years ago. The current fire station is operating in a 24/7 operation, and we have put a Band-Aid on that station probably about 10 years ago. At the time, no 24-hour operations could be held and provided out of that station. And we are currently, fortunately, looking at finalizing some plans on a piece of land for a new Company 2 station, and hoping that's going to be coming about here in the very near future. The next facility is our Company 4 Shiloh station. And this is a station that we do not currently have. If you know anything about Company 1 and the county, we're approximately 183 square miles that we're tasked to cover. Company 1, here on Route 3 across from Food Lion, responds to, in its primary first due coverage, 113 square miles of that 183. So what that means is that we have a first due coverage in our area of responsibility from the Stafford County line to the Westmoreland County line. And that is becoming more of a task to provide a timely response to. So what we would like to do in our future vision in the Fire and Rescue Department is to cut that primary response in half. We are seeing our calls for service go up every year. We are seeing our the amount of transportation and the amount of vehicles on the road are everly increasing, and the response times are getting up to a point that it's minutes make a difference in the fire and rescue business. So what we were proposing is to have a station that would primarily serve the southeast portion of our county, and that would cut down on those response times. The last project that we have is the replacement of Engine 3. Engine 3 is our primary fire suppression apparatus at the Company 3 fire station. This fire station is located in Fairview Beach. It provides all of the primary fire suppression for that response district. That truck is a 1998. By the time we look at servicing that, replacing that vehicle, we're looking at approximately 23 to 24 years of service to the county. That vehicle, that truck has had some pretty major maintenance issues in the past couple years. And so it's going to be imperative that that vehicle be replaced in the years to come. And that concludes my overview of the three projects that we have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on each one of them.
Chief, just going back to your, you mentioned that we've got 7 ambulance units, 1 reserve. They do 200,000 per year. That's not per vehicle, though, correct? Is that an aggregate?
That's a cumulative amount. The 200,000 between all 7 of them.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're still in pretty good standing as far as some low mileage, newer models that are in the fleet that we can hopefully get through this period of time with.
Yes, sir. I think we can. I think we can. We are always battling. Whether it's preventive maintenance or whether it's things that are breaking down. We had one the other week. Need a turbo actuator replaced. Those are not cheap. And sometimes these maintenance issues can cause units to go out of service for extended periods of time. I do think that we can get by this year. And I think that we can, I wouldn't say that again for the following year, but I do think that we can get through it for this year.
On the 270, are you getting 1 unit a year or 2 units a year? I know there's maintenance in there also.
1 unit a year, yes, sir. And do let me say that the reason why, and I think I've addressed this with the commission before, what our goal and what my goal is to space the replacement of these units out. That prevents us from having to come to this body and also the Board of Supervisors and say, hey, we need 3 units at $270,000 apiece, all at one time. And that's what we're trying to prevent. This model also uses a recommendation that was provided by a state study that came in and provided a list of recommendations for our services.
Chief, have you seen a decrease since the pandemic of calls or mileage? I mean, have you done any comparison from this time of year in 20 to last year or for the last 6 months?
Did you say a decrease or increase?
A decrease or an increase? I mean, I'm curious what have you compared the call numbers or?
We saw a decrease right
Initially.
at the onset.
Okay.
And that went from right at March, April, and May, and then as we got towards the middle and end of May, we saw the numbers go right back to normal levels.
Okay.
What we didn't see is the acuity level of the calls. We still saw very sick people. We just didn't get some of the less emergent type of calls.
The fire and rescue facilities are split up into 125,000 and then 7 million. Is there a difference is one repairing the old and the other's the new facility? Is that?
So the $125,000 is additional money for land acquisition.
Okay.
And the 7 million is construction.
Does that include equipment at all or just construction?
Does not include any equipment. That would just be the construction of the station.
Okay.
But it's actually 2 stations.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it would be helpful if those were broken out into separate line items, just to avoid confusion. Well, you look out in 2024, 2025, and there's 7.3 million. Yeah.
At the time, one of the reasons why we were asked to put them together is because there was some conversations and concerns over which station was more important. And instead of getting into the politics of it, we were asked just to put them together and allow the policymakers to hash that out.
That makes perfect sense. That's the first time I've heard that. You may have said it before, but I understand. Thank you.
You mentioned 7 operating ambulances, correct? Is that in service at a time with spares or is 7 total?
7 total, and 7 are not always staffed. We typically daily staff 3 to 4 units per day.
Okay. So you have 3 extra, somewhat extra, I guess. You probably overlap if you had two calls.
We do, and typically, I will tell you, it's very rare that even 5 are in service all at one time. Yeah.
So this may be a foolish comment or redundant, but it seems to me that like Company 4, the Shiloh, I mean, money aside, it would be great if we had built that 10 years ago. I mean, I know you combined Dahlgren and Shiloh together, but at this point, even with the limitations of the Dahlgren company being in 2 buildings, there really is nothing in Shiloh other than Company 1 having to cover so much area that, you know, theoretically you wouldn't want that to happen, correct? I mean, like Shiloh is kind of behind the game. It's been needed for a while, correct?
Well, there's nothing there. There's never been anything there. So, you know, as the county is growing, and we're seeing, you know, the Company 1 station not only take care of the southeast part of the county, we're also taking care of the, you know, responding to the Stafford County end, the western end of the county. We're seeing growth in that area. You know, it's certainly it's my recommendation. I think that we need to get a station, build a station, and have a quicker response as the community, our community moves forward, and you know, certainly, especially if we start seeing more growth in that development triangle that's been identified. So.
Any additional questions for Chief Moody?
I had a question for Mr. Young, actually. On right now, we're talking about wiping an ambulance out. Is there a chance of getting anything CARES Act for that, or have we looked into that side of it?
Yes, sir. Actually, we had a very detailed discussion / debate about if ambulance would qualify for CARES funding or not. But we also afforded the county attorney the time and space to actually form a legal opinion on if it was eligible or not. And CARES funding was deemed not eligible to be utilized on the purchase of ambulances.
Okay. Okay.
Heather, as far as the Shiloh district, that's zoned A1,
Mostly A1 and A2.
any idea of what percentage you need built out?
Not offhand, but it is slated as our most rural parcel of the county, with no settlement areas proposed.
Chief, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So as this is a public hearing, we're going to open the public comment period for this portion of the public hearing. If anybody wishes to address the Planning Commission, please come forward. As usual, please state your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And again, this is just for the CIP portion of this hearing. And seeing if there's doesn't appear to be any people in the audience. Mr. Dines, do we have anybody on the phone that would like to speak to the CIP portion of this evening's agenda? Thank you, sir. Seeing there's no further public comment, we'll close the floor and turn it back over to the Planning Commission. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Please go ahead.
My name is Howard Thomas. I'm at 14354 Round Hill Road. During the course of the discussion, the gentleman to your right asked a question of Ms. Hall about the software. I believe the question he was driving at was whether or not the IT staff has been involved in the discussion of acquiring that software, because I suspect that ultimately they will assume some responsibility for the security of the portal, the maintenance, the patching, updates, and things like that. So the training of her staff in using that software is one thing, but the actual execution of maintaining that portal and the administration of the software, I believe, was the gentleman's question, and I believe that's something that would be worth following up on.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we will, once we close this, we'll pull it back in and we'll discuss it. But thank you for providing that extra data point. And Mr. DeVries is back. So I'll go back to, we will now close this portion of the public comment period and bring it back into the planning commission. And did you catch that, Mr. DeVries?
I got the gist of it, yeah, Dan.
So that's,
That is pretty much what I was curious about.
IT was involved in our speaking with Municity and them going over with us, what they could provide to King George County. However, with our subscription and our annual costs, the maintenance, the patching, the things of that nature, if the system were to go down, that would all be taken care of by Municity.
Okay, but I'm just concerned about what happens to King George County data. Is it going to a third party for management?
No, our on-site staff will manage it.
It is cloud-based.
It's a cloud-based.
All right, who owns the cloud hardware?
Chris, is Liz online from Municity? I believe so. Can you ask her to patch in, please?
Good afternoon, or good evening. This is Liz Mistretta from Unicity, General Code. The software is a cloud-based software. It is hosted on the AWS servers. So it is protected and redundant there. The security is what AWS has for security. We can forward any kind of information you'd like for that. The data is kept on those servers. And so the IT staff has very limited needs. We have very limited needs for the King George County's IT staff other than providing computers for people to be able to access it and items maybe in the field if you have a mobile need and you need to have a phone or a tablet. Those kind of the hardware, that would be more what I'd be looking for support from the IT staff. Outside of that, again, it's hosted on the cloud, so all support comes from Unicity. So, we're maintaining, we're updating the software as new patches come on, or new updates to the software that's automatically updated on your servers at AWS, which is the Amazon servers. Does that answer the question?
So it's on Amazon.
It begins to. It begins to, I think. I'm still not clear on what happens to King George County data. It's no longer on King George County servers. It's now on cloud servers managed by Municity.
Correct.
Is that what I heard correctly? Okay.
Yes, sir. You're
Mr.
correct.
DeVries,
the servers are because the software is in the cloud. That is the definition, actually, of how that would work. So the actual data is stored on the AWS server.
Mr. DeVries, anything that is stored on Municity would be public information. None of that confidential, anything that couldn't be FOIA'd, things of that nature, none of those types items would be controlled by Municity.
Okay, so that sounds like you're saying just the public-facing portion is going to be on the servers? In other words, confidential data will reside still in King George County servers?
Yes, whatever confidential documents, which are very limited in our department, because most things are public information, we wouldn't put them on that type of server. That would stay on a King George County server.
Now it's starting to sound like this program is pretty much strictly for the public-facing data.
It's not only for the public facing, but it's also for our staff to utilize, to keep track, input that ability so that we can take the burden off of our staff so that instead of answering 10 phone calls of, can I schedule an inspection within 10 minutes, those people can log on and do that themselves. Instead of saying, hey, I'm looking to purchase this property, has it ever been rezoned? Does it have any proffers, any special exceptions? All of that would be readily available. Whereas now, when you call and you ask somebody that question, we have to take their name down, call them back, and go and pull a file that is hopefully in the right place and comb through all of those files to get that person that information. And those are just a few of the examples of things that it would cut down on our staff.
So it's kind of providing two things. It's new tools and new toolbox, but it also takes all the IT O&M tail off of the county. It unburdens that, and then that just gets put on the AWS, for all the technology upgrade, refresh, migration path, failover, high availability, all that stuff. Our people don't have to deal with any of that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion within the Planning Commission about any of the items that we had before us this evening?
Chairman Parker, if there are no other questions, I did want to remind the Planning Commission that the duties tonight is to rank these and send them in on your spreadsheet by October 27th.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Obviously, this is an unusual year, but I didn't actually understand what motion we were looking to.
It is unusual. However, we are still going to rank them as traditionally done. Once I receive those rankings, I'll present the average, in which we'll go over at the next meeting and come up with that final recommendation to send to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, and Heather, I'm sorry, you said the suspense was October 22nd?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, I'm inclined to go with what's been recommended here to include the upping of the priority from necessary to urgent on the radio communication system. But I mean, there's not much to work with in terms of funding. So I'm inclined to just to go with the recommendations. That's just where my head's at.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I could apply Mr. Meyer's comment to that too, the radio communication system. Was that also something that we may have investigated as far as CARE Act potential, or maybe was or was not covered by that? Yes, sir. Okay. For the, right, okay.
We talk about microwaves or the number one?
Yeah, I think that was the maintenance of the existing one, correct, Dr. Young? Okay. 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 So Heather, again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to ask, but the motion that we're looking for tonight would be to,
So traditionally, you go back and you score them, but if you wanted to, as Mr. Caldwell mentioned, simply vote based on the county administrator's recommendations, you could certainly do that tonight and go ahead and make that recommendation as presented by the county administrator to the board, or we can go back and do the rating system and bring forth the average in the November meeting for your final recommendation.
I'll turn it over to the commissioners for what they feel is best as far as the appropriate motion.
I would consent, like Mr. Falwell, to go with the recommendations as noted.
Yeah, I got to add that I agree with Josh, Mr. Caldwell. I've been trying to sort of, in my mind, score them as we went through them, and I'm finding that I'm not very different at all from what the recommendation is. I will comment that everything on here has got value and importance. You know, given the financial situation and just the times we're in, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Caldwell and just adopt what's been recommended. Is
there any further discussion on that potential motion or topic?
My only differences that I had were, I think the school buses in a year that school buses aren't running is a little bit of an overkill. I don't know if you cut it to 3 or you just leave it at 6. I think upping the radio communication system to an urgent, I think that's an absolute necessary. Everything else, I think I'm good with the recommendations that are there. The fiber for the IT fiber, that might be something else to chase on CARES Act. I don't know, with the internet being an important part of the of what that's for.
So would anybody like to make a motion with those amended changes within the spreadsheet, and then we can carry it forward this evening? I'm assuming, Heather, that would probably shave off a good amount of time and expedite the process as well, correct?
Works great for me.
Okay.
So we're agreeing to make what changes in priority? King George Sheriff's Office line number 1 radio communication system, change that from necessary to urgent. Is that what we're saying?
I believe that was 1, yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Myers, which ones? You had 2?
Well, the only one I really had to change, my one question was on the fiber. Maybe they could work that into, check that on the CARES Act also for the fiber between the schools. On that might be a way to get that done. Not anything we're going to change, but something to look into. And the school buses, I mean, should we leave it 6 school buses?
Well, aren't we supposed to be safety down
In theory, yeah. Yeah.
And the problem is that you're going to have less kids in 2012 if the current plan. I mean, so even if it's think about that. I don't know.
Does that mean more shifts per bus? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would think that's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Just more.
Tara, could you, I'm sorry, Tara, right here. Could you speak into the mic from right here? I can't hear you.
you might.
Sorry. I just think that there's a possibility of having more mileage if they do go back. K2 is currently slated. I know that's still on the table and there's some concerns, but you're going to have less kids per bus and you're going to have probably multiple routes. Dr. Young, would you agree? Are you on behalf of Dr. Benson tonight?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. I actually had the opportunity to review the guidelines that were coming down from the state regarding how the schools were going to handle the transport of children. And right now, to be honest, it is a nightmare. They are going to have to social distance kids on the buses. It is going to lead to more routes, and of course, that is going to lead to more wear and tear on buses. I'm glad that you noted that that concern, Ms. Patterson, because that is a true challenge that the schools are going to have to tackle. And of course, bus replacements is going to have to play a part in that solution to get our kids to the schools.
Kind of sounds like a keep it then. Is that?
Yeah, okay. So then I think the amendment we were looking for then was to move the radio system from up to urgent from necessary, correct? Or did I put my paper? Yeah. From necessary to urgent, the radio communication system. So would that be the, and I don't want to make a motion, so I'll let.
So I move that we forward the fiscal year 2021 through 2025 capital improvement program to the Board of Supervisors with recommendation for approval based on the county administration recommendations. And the only change to priorities is in King George Sheriff's Office, line number 1, radio communication system, priority change from necessary to urgent.
Motion's been made. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, I believe. Thank you.
Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Who made?
Mr.
Mr. DeVries?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. That's right. On to case number 20-09-Z04, zoning ordinance text amendment to permit the use of battery energy storage facility as a use permitted by right in the industrial district. Amendments to section 1.9 and 2.12.2 and article 4. We are first going to hear from Mr. Pancotti. And
Good evening.
We'll open the floor for comment. Lewis, it's all yours. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I am Louis Pancotti, planner, and I'll be presenting case number 20-09-Z04, zoning ordinance text amendment to permit the use of battery energy storage facility as a use permitted by right in the industrial I zoning district. Amendments to sections 1.9 and 2.12.2 and article 4. Next slide, please. Battery energy storage facilities store electrical energy that can be used for short periods of time to reduce peak power demand and lessen the likelihood of power outages. Currently, the King George County zoning ordinance does not permit this use in any zoning district. This proposed amendment would add battery energy storage facility as a by right use in the I industrial zoning district. This amendment will also define the term and add supplemental regulations in Article 4 related to this use. Next slide. Here are just a few examples of battery energy storage. The picture on the left is of the Beacon battery energy storage system and the Beacon solar plant located in California. And to the right is a 20 megawatt energy storage system located in McHenry, Illinois. Next slide, please. Section 1.9 will be amended to define battery energy storage facility as one or more battery energy storage systems assembled together capable of storing energy in order to supply electrical energy at a future time, but not to include a standalone 12 volt car battery or an electrical motor vehicle or consumer products. This use will be added to section 2.12 as a by right use in the industrial I zoning district. Next slide. This map shows the parcels in the county that are currently zoned industrial, which would be where the use would be permitted by right. Next slide. Section 4.19 will be amended to include additional requirements for battery energy storage facilities. The first requirement would be that public water or an existing commercial well must be present or must be available to the property. Facilities shall not be visible from any adjacent street, use, or building, and access to the property for King George County Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services shall be provided in a manner acceptable. Next slide, please. Site plans for battery energy storage facilities shall be accompanied by a decommissioning plan to be implemented upon abandonment and/or in conjunction with the removal of the facility to be approved by the Department of Community Development. The decommissioning plan shall include at minimum the following: a narrative description of the activities to be accomplished, including who will perform that activity and at what point in time, for complete physical removal of all battery energy storage system components, structures, equipment, security barriers, and transmission lines from the site. The estimated decommissioning cost and how said estimate was determined. This estimate shall be reevaluated every 5 years, and a letter of credit or bond based on this cost estimate shall be provided upon prior to a final approval. The manner in which the site will be restored, including a description of how any changes to the surrounding area or other systems adjacent to the battery energy storage system, such as but not limited to structural elements, building penetrations, means of egress, and required fire detection suppressant systems will be protected during the decommissioning and confirmed as being acceptable after the facility is removed. Next slide. Site plans for battery energy storage facilities shall also be accompanied by an emergency plan that will at minimum contain the following: procedures for safe shutdown, de-energizing or de-isolation of equipment and systems under emergency conditions to reduce the risk of fire, electric shock, and personal injuries, and for safe startup following cessation of emergency conditions. Procedures for inspection and testing of associated alarms, interlocks, and controls. Procedures to be followed in the response to notifications from battery storage management system when provided that could signify potentially dangerous conditions, including shutting down equipment, summoning service and repair personnel, and providing agreed upon notification to fire department personnel for potentially hazard condition in the event of a system failure. Energy procedures to be followed in the case of fire, explosion, release of liquids or vapors, damage to critical moving parts, or other potentially dangerous conditions. Procedures can include sounding the alarm, notifying the fire department, evacuating personnel, de-energizing equipment, and controlling and extinguishing the fire. Procedures and schedules for conducting drills of these procedures and for training local first responders for the contents of the plan and appropriate response procedures. Next slide. King George County staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward case number 20-09-04, zoning ordinance text amendment to permit the use of battery energy storage facility as a use permitted by right in the Industrial District I, amendments to section 1.9 and 2.12.2, and Article 4 to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval. Comments were received from Fire and Rescue after the presented materials were prepared. I have given you all the comments from Chief Moody and also an amended draft of section 4.9 to reflect those comments. As you can see, 4.19.A or point 1A includes a requirement that fire hydrants must also be available in addition to public water or a commercial well. C also states, or now also states, that a Connex box must be available for fire department access, or not Connex, a Knox box. And D has been amended, or D has been added and requires an NFPA 704 placards on all building entrances. And the phrase release of hazardous materials has been added to provision F.
Can I just clear one thing up, Mr. Pancotti?
Sure.
What you read to us was the original.
Yes.
The original amendment. What did you say that Chief Moody's comments have now been incorporated into that?
Yes, I included I've given to you. It should.
I've seen it. I'm just saying there's a difference between what you read out and what we have from Chief Moody. You're saying this is all included, meant to be included in your amendment as you presented it to us now?
The one that was the standalone 4.19 amendment with the highlighted text, that is the amended after receiving comments from Chief Moody, which would be the ones that I would recommend that you would approve tonight.
All right. Thanks, Louis, again. So now we're going to open the second of our 3 public hearings this evening. We're open the public comment period. Again, if anybody wishes to address the planning commission, please come forward, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Again, this is just for this particular portion of the planning commission meeting this evening. So at this point, we will open the floor for public comment. And again, seeing there aren't any folks in the audience, Mr. Dines, is there anyone online that would like to speak to the battery storage text amendment portion of tonight's agenda? All right. That said, we will now close this evening's second public hearing and turn it back over to the Planning Commission for discussion. And we've also got Mr. Miner in the audience, I see, who is the resident expert and driving wheel behind this project. So we've got subject matter expert on hand. I guess I'll ask one. So, Nick, I know in the previous meeting we had talked about maybe this as a potential draw for larger industries such as a data center or something like that. Do we have more interest, and maybe I'm going outside of what I should ask, but do we have some more interest from outside entities such as that in the?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So as of today, we have 3 prospects who are sort of waiting on this text amendment change. 1 existing prospect, 2 from outside of the county who are sort of waiting for it to be passed, and then they can sort of move forward with what parcels they would be, what parcels that are available and which ones they would be interested in looking at. Once this is done, then they can essentially provide me capital investment numbers, job numbers, the scope of the project that they're looking at, and start looking at site plan developments.
So they are kind of predicating their interest on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they don't want to move forward until they know that the county would accept the battery storage facility. Once they know that the county would accept it, then they would move forward with what their project details essentially are. As of right now, they just say, we have some interest. Here are the parcels that we're looking at. And now we just need to know what are the regulations so we can lay out our site plans and see if something like that will work. So, and just to sort of comment on Chief Moody's additions, I have no issues with them. I don't think that any of the prospects would. They are geared towards public safety, the safety of his staff and his crew, and I would say in benefit of the prospects.
Excellent. Any questions? I'll go around. Mr. Caldwell?
Yeah, I really don't have any issues. It came together nicely. It's been amended based on Chief Moody's input. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I'm inclined to recommend approval.
Okay. Gabbro?
I have no comments either. I agree with him. I tend to recommend approval.
Mr. Myers?
I think it's pretty straightforward. As long as the fire hydrants have the flow that's necessary, I think it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. It's industrial.
Yeah.
Fits the makeup of the zoning.
It's a good buy right there. Ms. Patterson? Reese?
A couple of questions for staff on language. On the draft amendment, section 1.9, definition of terms, last sentence, not to include a standalone 12-volt car battery or an electric motor vehicle or consumer products. Would it be more clear to add the words for personal use? Is that the aim of what that sentence is trying to say?
Yeah, so this would, so that someone, wouldn't put a bunch of batteries together as a battery energy storage for their personal use. This was more for an industrial battery energy storage facility.
So would the words for personal use obfuscate or clarify in your view?
It would be too broad.
Well, that's what I would
For
recommend. I
personal
mean,
use.
something to consider, and if anybody else wants to speak to that, that's fine. The other one was on section 4.19.1A, or B rather. It says facilities shall not be visible from any adjacent street, use, or building. What is the aim of that requirement?
Just to shield from public view, this is the exact language we used for data centers.
Is it? Okay, no, but the word facilities, does that include buildings? We don't want to see a building from any adjacent street, use, or building?
Yes, a facility would include a building.
That seems to be a little bit hard to, rather hard, difficult requirement to meet. Was that your intention, that the building should not be seen from any adjacent street, use, or building?
Yes, it was to provide for appropriate screening and shielding of that.
Okay, so that includes screening, all right. And below that, D3 on decommissioning. Let's see. The manner in which the site will be restored, including a description of how any changes to the surrounding areas and other systems adjacent to the battery energy storage system, such as, but not limited to, structural elements, building penetration, means of egress, and required fire detection suppression systems will be protected during decommissioning and confirmed as being acceptable after the facility is removed. Would you consider adding a sentence about remediation of any toxic spills or anything like that to that paragraph?
If we certainly could.
Would that be the best place to put something like that?
I believe that would be more under F, or what would now be F. It would be E in the original draft, which requires the emergency plan and would cover what would happen after a spill or something like that, and how to rectify that situation.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Kendrick?
I'm good.
Mr. DeCorda?
I have no comment.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Watkins? Okay. That said, I think we're looking for a motion, and if, Mr. DeVries, do you want to, where do we stand with the text language? Are we amicable to that, or do you want to include that into a motion, or how would you like to do that?
Are there any objections to my recommendations? I'd like staff to consider that, yes, please. If there are no objections from the commission.
So that would be a sentence added.
Remediation of any toxic spills or pollutants.
Would that be covered under 419.1F3? Or 4, maybe more appropriately, release of liquids or vapors?
We could also, I mean, we can explicitly say remediation after such a spill, so it's more.
I mean, my concern is about decommissioning after use.
Oh, remediation, okay.
If I may ask, then the other data points that you requested, you were fine with clarification?
The state of visual facilities, I'm fine with staff's explanation of that.
Okay. So decommissioning, then would be the
Decommissioning and remediation of any pollutants.
We good with that? All right. So then we're looking for a motion with those minor verbiage changes, and if I could solicit the commission for that.
I'll do it. I move that we forward case number 2009Z04 zoning ordinance text amendment to permit the use of battery energy storage facility as a use permitted by right in the industrial district. 1, amendments to sections 1.9 and 2.12.2 and Article 4 to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. If we could, seeing it's 9 o'clock almost, I'd like to take a 10-minute break if we could. Did we do the motion on that one? I can't ever remember. Can we get a motion for a 10-minute break?
I move that we take a 10-minute break.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. to regroup. I could ask everybody to find their seats and we'll get going. All right. And we are on to case number 19-03-Z02. Request by Daryl Hertenstein Investment Group on behalf of Beverly C. Coates, Dave F. Clare, and Alice Jeter Jones, villages at King George Crossroads, to rezone proffers tax map 33 parcels 74 and tax map 33 parcels 78 and 79 from rural agricultural A2 to general trade C2, total 17.65 acres, and multifamily dwelling district R3, total 92.67 acres. Total project area of 110.32 acres. General development plan, which is subject to modification, proposes to construct a maximum of 450 dwelling units with a proffer of no more than 450 units, a minimum of 100 units being age restricted, noted by Land Bay C, with 92.67 acres proposed to be zoned multifamily dwelling district R3, West Village Land Bay A. 8.45 acres of C2, proposing medical office, 14,300 square foot pad. West Village Land Bay B, proposing 6.31 acres of C2, 7,500 square feet pad, 2,500 square foot pad, and a 2,500 square foot pad. Property is currently zoned rural agricultural A2. The minimum lot size in agricultural zoning district is 2 acres. The requested zoning is multifamily dwelling R3 and general trade C2. The minimum lot size in R3 with both public water and public sewage is 15,000 square feet, and townhomes 1,500 square feet minimum. The minimum lot size in C2 with both public water and public sewer is 5,000 square feet. For King George County Comprehensive Plan 2019, the property is located in the Route 3-301 primary settlement area. We will first hear from Ms. Hall, then we will move on to our public comment period.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Next slide, please. Again, Mr. Chairman Parker was so kind to read that very long paragraph, so I'm not going to do it again. Next slide. As you are aware, we have heard this case over several months now. This presentation and staff report will only discuss the most recent application updates. Next slide. June 16, 2020, the King George County Board of Supervisors held a public hearing delayed due to COVID-19 regarding case number 19-03-Z02. After much discussion with applicant Mr. Brown, Mary Washington Hospital, and the Board of Supervisors regarding the proffer statement 3A, applicant currently has a contract with Mary Washington Healthcare, whereby Mary Washington Healthcare has agreed to build a 14,300 square foot facility on Land Bay A. The Board of Supervisors made a motion to remand the project back to the Planning Commission to evaluate the developer's proposal with changes made to address the concerns raised by Mr. Granger. Second by Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Kupko read her statement to recuse herself from the discussion, and the vote on the matter was 4-0-1. Applicant and Mary Washington have repeatedly acknowledged that no such construction agreement exists and has never existed and will not exist prior to the rezoning, if at all. Next slide. Again, this is the cover page. Next slide. The existing conditions, as you know, this is in the area next to the King George Sheriff's Office and goes on over to Route 301. Next slide. The proposed 150 townhomes, 200 apartments, 48 age-restricted villas, and 52 age-restricted apartments for 450 total. Tot lot is shown on this sheet, as well as commercial. Next slide. The development continues on with the age-restricted at the top left portion of the page, as well as 200 apartments and additional commercial space. Next slide. Again, this is a recap of the commercial versus R3 zoning. Next slide. March 20th, 2020, a teleconference was held with King George County, Mr. Hertenstein and Mr. Jenkins, Vice President for Corporate Counsel of Mary Washington Healthcare. At that time, both applicant and Mary Washington Healthcare advised that there was no contract between the applicant, Mary Washington, and the villages. While Mary Washington, the applicant, indicated that they were negotiating a potential contract, at the time, King George County had not received a copy of the contract to build the 14,300 square foot medical facility previously mentioned in 3A. In the proffer statement, it states that such a contract is in place, and that was information presented to the staff and Planning Commission up to the March 20th call. May 29th, a real estate transfer agreement between Hertenstein Investment Group LLC and Metacorp Properties was provided by Daryl Hertenstein. August 17th, 2020, an amendment to the real estate transfer agreement was received by Community Development. Next slide. October 1st, 2020, a revised signed proffers were received by Community Development dated March 22nd with a revision date of August 21st, 2020. The major revisions include Proffer 3A, development of commercial parcels, and 4B, residential uses. 3A, development of commercial parcels, West Village Land Bay A. Land Bay A, as shown on the GDP, shall be developed under the C2 zoning regulations as a medical dental office or hospital and for no other use but that purpose, which may include an urgent care facility and medical laboratory facility, hereinafter a medical facility. Applicant shall build or cause to be built a medical facility suitable to serve the general medical needs of the residents of the county on Land Bay A, not less than 10,000 square feet and not more than 14,300 square feet. On or before the date, that is the 5 years after approval of the first site plan to be approved within respect to any portion or section of the property. For informational purposes, applicant currently has a land transfer agreement in place with Mary Washington Healthcare, whereby applicant has agreed to donate the property and $500,000 to Mary Washington in order to induce Mary Washington to build the aforesaid medical facility. Next slide. 4B, residential uses, updated language for consistency in current year. 4B, residential uses, any residential dwelling units constructed on the property shall be constructed in accordance with the DG. As the same may be amended or waived by the zoning administrator, the county shall not be required to issue more than 75 occupancy permits for residential dwelling units in Land Bay C during the year in which the rezoning is approved. The county shall not be required to issue more than 50 occupancy permits for the residential dwelling units in Land Bay C every year thereafter until the unit cap is reached as outlined in 4A. The number of unused occupancy permits in any given year may be carried over into subsequent years such that no more than 75 occupancy permits are permitted in the first year and 50 every year thereafter until the cap is reached as outlined in 4A. For the avoidance of doubt, if this application is approved in October 2020, the construction of the property does not begin until 2022, the applicant would be permitted to apply for 175 occupancy permits in 2021, 75 from 2020, 50 from 21, and 50 from 22, assuming all other requirements have been met, including water and sewer connections, and would not be permitted to apply for more than 175 occupancy permits. Next slide. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained herein or upon construction of a new Perkins Corner wastewater treatment plant to expand its capacity and level of service, or in the event the service authority elects not to build a new wastewater to Hopyard Farm wastewater treatment plant, then even the phasing schedule shall be deemed amended to allow the issuance of not more than 100 occupancy permits per year. Next slide. Community Development staff recommends the King George County Planning Commission forward the application with a recommendation for approval to the Board of Supervisors.
All right, so Ms. Hall, am I correct? You said that the applicant has a brief statement?
Yes, the applicant is here tonight.
Okay, so at this point, we will first hear briefly from the applicant, and then we're going to turn it over to the floor for public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, my name is David. I represent my investment group in the field.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Parker and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Landon Davis. I represent the Hertenstein Investment Group. It's good to see you all again. I'm here tonight to make just some very brief remarks about the latest changes to the application. This is still the same application that was approved by this board at the February 11th, 2020 meeting. The project's still in compliance, perfectly aligned with the comprehensive plan, providing for focused growth in the Route 3 and 301 PSA. It still has a projected net positive fiscal impact on the county's bottom line, still offers cash proffers to schools and fire and rescue, and still provides a much needed lifeline to the King George County Service Authority in the form of $3 million worth of prepaid tap fees, which is much needed at this time. The only thing that has changed is the two parts that Heather's already kind of pointed out, which is that the language regarding the hospital facility or the urgent care facility has been tightened up to eliminate any inaccuracies or any ambiguities. I worked very closely with Mr. Britton on that, and I believe he would, confirm that we worked together and came to a mutually agreeable conclusion on the language there. And the loophole or the ambiguity that was created has been cured. And you have an even better application in front of you now, one that, virtually guarantees that the medical facility will be built, if not by Mary Washington Healthcare, then by my client. We've amended the proffers to deal with the issue. And so for those reasons, we'd ask that you forward this onto the board with a recommendation for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right. At this point, we're going to start the third of our three public comment periods for the public hearing this evening. Again, as before, if anyone wishes to address the Planning Commission, please come up, state your name, address, and again, please limit your comments to 3 minutes to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. This one is for this last agenda item. I have a list of folks here, and I'm just going to start at the top and work down. I'm going to ask Ms. Pattison if I can ask her to be my timekeeper. So we're going to start again on the list as we were received the folks who signed up with Mr. Howard Thomas.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Dr. Howard Thomas at 14354 Round Hill Road. I rise in opposition to this zoning amendment, and I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Michael Hayes to state our position.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Actually, I have Mr. Hayes, a couple people down, so I'm going to...
Yes, I would like to yield my time to him to elaborate on my behalf.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have the opportunity for a presentation, but I did make handouts for this evening if I could pass these. So last time I spoke before you in February of this year in opposition of this project, and I went through a lot of the financial impact analysis and what I thought were the deficiencies in the data that was used in that analysis that led to the $21,000 profit that Mr. Landon was talking about just a few minutes ago. I know in the essence of time, I don't have the ability to go through all of that, so I put that in a summary form to you to put all that in black and white so you could see the rationale behind the numbers that we came up with. Okay, so tonight I need to get the opportunity to vote on this project again. I think when you're looking at your vote, there's 3 questions that need to be answered. One is, will King George be better off with the approval of this project as proposed? Number 2, will this project help the county's budget and taxpayers or be an additional burden? Number 3, is this the best deal we can make for all parties involved? Okay. With what we looked at before, I'm not going to go through all the stuff that you have in front of you. I'm just going to try to hit some of the highlights this evening on the things that were most concerning. At the previous Planning Commission meeting, we heard from a lot of public comment from citizens that said that we need affordable housing. We had several people get up and say, I need affordable housing. We had several people get up and say, I want it for the medical facility. And we cannot pick and choose one or two aspects of this project to vote on. We have to look at the project as a whole. And that's what I ask you to do, is not for one entity or another. And, we found out from the Board of Supervisors meeting, there is no construction contract, so there is no assurance that we will get that medical facility. There is no assurance that we will get affordable housing. None of that is in writing. And if it's not in writing, it's not binding, okay? We've seen this happen in the past. I know it's kind of a sore subject to bring up the Hop Yard project, but we know there's a lot of promises made there that did not develop and get materialized. And we do not need something like that to happen again. So I want to make sure we have the assurances in place that that does not happen in the future, whether it's this project or any other project that comes before this board and the Board of Supervisors. So I'm going to talk on a couple of things, basically the three biggest concerns. We already talked about the Mary Wash Hospital, which is one of the big ones. I think that was the biggest proponent, or most people opposed to or wanted the Mary Washington facility more than anything else. And we saw with the date, and if you look at the history there, the land transfer agreement didn't take place until after we learned there was no contract. Okay? This is not an emergency room. Some people say we're going to get an emergency room. That's not the case. Even if this happens, we don't get an emergency room. Number three, they stated at the Board of Supervisors meeting they are not currently looking to develop a site in King George County. They are not actively looking. They're already here, but they're not looking to build a facility anywhere in the county. They're looking and considering this just because it's being given to them. Well, we have a facility being built right up the road on Route 3 by Food Line and Fast Mart. No one induced them to come here and build their facility. I would tell you to take that in consideration. And the service authority, that's a big one, and I don't have the answer to solve the problem, but the $3 million of prepaid tap fees does not reduce the cost to the county or the county taxpayers in the cost of building that facility, okay? Those prepaid tap fees help the county to get financing to build a new facility, but does not reduce the cost. It does not help the county in any way reduce what the monthly rates will be to the people that are on those service lines, okay? A new facility is somewhere between $10 and $15 million. To decommission the current facility is between $9.5 and $11.4 million. So we need $20 to $26 million. That $3 million doesn't help because the developer gets that money back when he sells the development or sells the lots. It's not a gift to the service authority. It just helps secure financing. Okay? The fiscal impact, still, when you look at the fiscal impact report, if you look at the operating revenue and expenses for the service authority, the fiscal impact report still shows it with all these things operating in the red, still losing $120,000 a year in that fiscal report. So this does not solve the problem. It's a step in the direction, but it doesn't solve the problem, as some people have alluded to. And the proffers, these are one-time payments. They don't help with the ongoing cost of expenses and things into the future. They are one-time gifts. And when we look at the proffer statements, what is the county actually getting? Going to the county itself, not to Mary Wash, not prepaid tap fees. It's $575,000 is what's going to the county. $350 to the schools, $225 to the fire and rescue. In the fiscal impact report, this project has an estimated value of $151 million. And $575,000 comes back to King George County. That's 0.4%. Is that the best we can do? I don't think so. Okay? So if we're going to approve a project in this county, we need a partnership with a developer that's mutually beneficial for all parties, the developer, the taxpayer, and the county. And I don't think this proposal as it stands is mutually beneficial for all involved. The last time you voted on this, many of you expressed the concerns you had about the financial impact this would have to King George County. And you said we can't stop growth. And you're absolutely right, we cannot.
Mr. Hayes, you got, you're in the 6 minutes, and I see you, I'm assuming that's your wife on there is,
Correct.
is that, okay, so we'll go.
I'll be done in another 3. We good? May I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we talked about we can't stop growth, and you're right, we cannot stop growth. Growth will come, but we can control it. We can be selective in what we allow to happen in this county. Okay? If we do not have to accept the first offer that comes to us, if we have designated this area, and I know we have another area that's designated for development of growth, right? We get one shot, one opportunity to do something good and be selective in what we allow to happen here. Okay? And I just think that with that opportunity, we just can't settle for something that's good or something that's okay. We need to settle for something that's great. And everything that I heard tonight in the comprehensive investment plan, it goes back to my original question. Is this going to help the county, or is this going to be additional burden on all our resources, all our services, on our schools, and we get $575,000 for it? Those are the points I would ask you to consider. The rest of it's in my packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has of anything I've put in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Mr. Sherman Davis.
Thank you. My name is Sherman Davis. I reside at 15203 Hall Road in King George, Virginia. I pastor the Tabernacle Baptist Church at 10640 Kings Highway here in King George. First, I want to thank the Planning Commission for your time. It takes special people to sit and listen to all this for hours at a time. You shouldn't have any problem going to church on Sunday for about an hour. But anyway, I just want to say a few things you've probably already heard before. And that is what I understand in the last meeting in June, that this was approved by this Planning Commission because of the hospital and all the promises that were made about the Mary Washington facilities. And from what we understand, they were just blowing smoke, and that none of that was really true. And my concern is if they were untruthful about those things, about that, what else is in here that's untruthful? Also, I understand that if a property is rezoned, that they really don't have to do what they say they're going to do anyway. They can do anything they want to after the property is rezoned. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's certainly what I have been informed about. I'm concerned about our schools. I'm concerned about higher taxes. I'm concerned about our sheriff's office. I'm concerned about our highways and all the extra that would be on the highways. And of course, I appreciate you, and I know you want to do the best for our county. The truth of the matter is that I, like 75% of the folks I talk to in King George County, love the rural county. And I've been here for, pastor in Tabernacle Baptist Church for the past 44 years. And I love the rural county, and I hope that any future plans to build and what's going on, it would be certainly taken under strict consideration of what, if you love this county and what you want for the future of our county. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, Reverend David. Mr. Baird.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having me speak again this evening on this matter of concern to our county. It's time to be realistic. We're going to have growth. There's no question about it. We're building a 4-lane bridge coming across the river. We're going to see more people from there. We're going to see our county budget needs grow. We're going to need more schools, more utility infrastructure, more fire and EMS. We need to realize that our number one employer, Dalvin, is going to continue to generate the need for more permanent and short-term housing. We need to realize our citizens want and need access to better health care. We need to realize our citizens want easier access to more retail and hospitality business. We need to realize that we need to posture ourselves to generate reasons and opportunities for more tax-paying businesses to come to our county. At the same time, we need to be wise in how we approach this and not be victims of urban sprawl like some counties to the north and west. I want to say I agree with Sherman that I like the rural nature of our county, but it doesn't mean that we can stop growth. Our Board of Supervisors has developed a comprehensive plan that provides at least a step in the right direction by helping direct our growth patterns to provide the least negative impact on our rural lifestyle. Tonight, this hearing, you're hearing again a proposal from Mr. Hertenstein that seems to be in accordance with the comprehensive plan, that in a planned cluster design, which adds more housing, provision for additional healthcare service, and provisions for income-producing retail space, we're addressing the needs of the county and helping preserve the rural nature of the majority of our county. Was the plan originally perfect when it was presented? No. But with the input from this commission, the board, staff, and the community, it's been polished and refined. Errors have been corrected. This project has been under development for over 2 years. Frankly, my biggest concern about the project is that it's taken so long. I mean, errors are made, corrections are made, but 2 years is a long time. We need to find a way to streamline the process in the future if we're to deal with future developments as an aside. But Mr. Hertenstein and the various landowners involved in this project all have close ties to King George. You know, I went to school with 2 of the landowners. I strongly believe that if they were not convinced of the long-term benefits that this project has in King George, they would have pulled out a long time ago. I believe the project is proper. I believe that it's a benefit to the county and should be approved. And I'll correct, my name is Bob Baird. I live at 15316 Kings Highway, King George. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, next is Mr. Mark Webb.
Good evening. My name's Mark Webb. I live at 4425 Kings Highway. Been a property owner and resident of King George for over 40 years. And I've seen a lot of changes since I've come here. And I'm sure a bunch of y'all have too. But the bottom line is, what we're talking about is making a handful of people a bunch of money at the expense of the rest of us. And by that, I mean the rest of our property owner, tax-paying residents of King George County. You know, we can go back and forth on this thing forever. And the fact that y'all been doing it for 2 years, you know, pretty much goes to show that. But I really think the bottom line is that the last thing that King George needs right now is 200 more apartments and another 100 and some more single-family dwellings. And I really can't for the life of me think that anybody would consider moving into a 55 and older community in a 200 apartment community. That just doesn't seem very appealing to me. I think that the ploy there, of course, is that hopefully those folks wouldn't have kids of school age that would put a further burden on our schools as the apartments would and the other single families. But, you know, in today's time, how many kids are moving back with their parents? How many grandchildren are moving back with their grandparents? Are we going to be able to police the 55 and older and stop them from putting kids in our schools? I don't see that happening. You know, there's been a lot of things addressed here. One thing that really pops out and foremost in my mind, among the other things that the other folks have mentioned, is the water. We've got that limited supply up above the school there at the corner. Without further addressing that and adding to that with either a well or at least a bigger capacity holding tank, something like it's up behind the food line there with additional pumps, I don't think we've got enough water capacity there to adequately handle fire protection for a development of this size up there. There's been no mention of that. We've talked about some proffers on the pre-buying of the sewage and water hookups.
Mr. Webb, we're at time. I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
We're at time, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, thank you. And Bradley, congratulations to you on your retirement, brother. You've done a good job for us, and we appreciate it. And thank you all. We appreciate y'all, too.
Thank you.
Sorry I ran over.
That's okay. Next up is Mr. Ed Tolliver. It looks like Mr. Tolliver has left the building. Next up, Stanley Shoppy. Did I say that correctly? Shop? I'm sorry. Shop.
It must not be correct.
I didn't get it right, but we know who we are. I'm sure. I spell my name funny too.
How do you pronounce it?
Shoppy. I'm sorry.
My name is Stanley Shoppy, and I live at 12508 Temple Drive, and just wanted to also state that I oppose the project, just like Mr. Hayes and Pastor Sherman said as well. So again, I oppose the project. Thank you.
Ms. Shoppy, would you like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Barbara Shoppy. I live at 12508 Temple Drive. Again, would like to just reiterate all my townsfolk here to say I oppose this project and was willing to give my case my 3 minutes, but it seems like he summed it up. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, apologies for the name confusion. I'm going to ask Mr. Dines if there's anybody on the phone that would like to speak. Okay.
Chairman Parker, we do have written correspondence for Mr. Pancotti to read.
This is a letter from Preston E. and Lynn J. Sims, owners of adjacent properties, tax map parcels 74C, 74D, and also 33-C or 3, 33-4, and 33-4E. Dear Ms. Hall and Planning Commission members, as owners of parcel 33-74C and 33-74D and also 33-3 and 33-4 and 33-4E, we recommend the denial of the subject rezoning request. Primary concerns include 1, drastic density impact of change from A2 to C2 and R3 and its impact to the community infrastructure, too much, too fast. The building/population density will become 4 times 400% the current amount of the immediate area, 154 units to 604 units, and increase the population 8% for the whole county. Additional 2,000 population added to the current 26,000 population centered in one concentrated area. B, significant debt increases to the already high level of county debt with minimal balance in the fees/tax income and loss of income from power plants. 2, ignores impact to Mount Rose Drive and Gira Road traffic patterns as drivers will be using these two roads as shortcuts to Route 301 South, Route 3 East, and the Route 3/Hop Yard area at significant increase in volume. A need for traffic light at Mount Rose Drive and Route 3 East deemed not needed, but in reality it is called for without the additional property development. B, increased traffic on Mount Rose Drive and Gira Road will endanger the current occupants in A2 zoning by endangering the entrance/exit from driveways and children boarding school buses. 3, Route 301 is going to have an increased traffic just from the Harry Nice/Mac Middleton Bridge additional span. The 3/301 area will become even more congested. And 4, this zoning request will become a stepping stone to future rezoning requests from the same Route 3/301 primary settlement area, further exacerbating the infrastructure impacts. We will no longer be the gateway to the northern neck, but the commercial corridor to the northern neck. Sincerely, Preston E. and Lynn J. Sims.
Do we have any other written correspondence? Okay. That being said, it looks like there's no further public comment, so we'll now close the floor for public comment and turn it back over for discussion within the Planning Commission.
All right, a couple of comments. I sort of feel like somebody dangled a carrot in front of me and then jerked it away and knew they were going to do that all along. But in any event, back in February, when this last came before us, I expressed some concerns about the size, the density of the project, and a lot of financial concerns, which our gentleman, Mr. Hayes, has put something together. I may or may not agree with everything he's got in his little outline here, but it does mirror my concerns about the financial aspects of the project. I just am still not convinced this project is good for the county or its residents. The amount of money we'll get out of proffers to support the fire and rescues, the schools is not going to meet even 1 year's worth of our cost for doing so. So I'm still of the opinion that I don't support this project.
We'll go around, Mr. Caldwell.
I did have a couple questions for Mr. Britton. The agreement that I guess caused some of the trouble, it says it is in place. Is that a fact? The agreement with Hardenstein and Mary Washington Hospital?
No.
No, it is not.
No, the original proffers contained.
I'm sorry, land transfer agreement.
Yes.
That is in place.
Yes.
And that's binding.
No. It's binding under its terms, and we have a copy of it, and council provided us, but it's not, I mean, it's not really for me to say what two other parties, it's not, we're not a party to it. We couldn't enforce it. That was part of the original problem. So there was a contract to build was in the first proffer. Apparently the developer could not come up with that. Mary Washington came and said, we're not doing that before the project. That ain't going to happen. So there was a substitute agreement, which is called a land transfer agreement, where developers said, hey, we'll give you the property and $500,000. And if you don't build within a certain period of time, I think that might have been a second iteration, then the land goes to the county and whatever's left of the $500,000 goes to the county. That was not acceptable to the county. Because it turned the county into a real estate agent, essentially, right, instead of having a medical facility. So as I understand it right now, they still have the land transfer agreement. I'm not sure. I'm not a party to that. But that would be between the developer and Mary Washington Hospital and whatever deal they have. But they could change that or iterate that as they saw fit. The big change here is that the developer now is required to build
or cause to be built, because you could have a hospital build it or something. The medical facility in the parameters stated, in the mark stated 5 years from, I think, the first.
And that is binding.
That is binding on the developer. That was the big thing. Proffers are to the developer, not to the developer to get a contract to do something else with somebody else. And we wouldn't have been able to enforce that under what's called the rule of privity. We're not part of the contract. Right. So it's very difficult to sue. So we would have had to go to the developer and make the, but now, yes, that's binding on the developer, as Mr. Davis said, and we worked that language out. That's why you don't see any land reversion or $500,000 or remainders. He's got to build the medical facility, or he's in breach of the proffers, and we get an injunction. Basically, he's got to do it. Yeah. Okay. Or the county can enforce it. The status of the land transfer agreement, I believe it's in place. Mr. Davis is here. I can't comment on that.
Okay. You answered the core of the question. Thank you. And then my other, my thoughts about what Mr. Hayes presented. I mean, it says the words the Berkeley Group on it. Is this, in fact, the Berkeley Group's impact analysis? You don't know, right? So, I mean, it seems plausible, but is this Berkeley Group's data? But, so that's, I'm kind of questioning that. That's all for now.
Jabber?
I guess I would say that my biggest concern is the misleading by the developer and or Mary Washington that there was a contract in place. The original proffer said that there is currently a contract with Mary Washington Healthcare to build a medical facility. And then I'm looking at the minutes from where the Board of Supervisors remanded this back to the Planning Commission, and basically their explanation was that that was in reference to a previous property when the proffers were drawn up. Well, it went on for, it's almost 2 years now, and it seems to me, I don't really buy that. Okay, you've got a team of lawyers, you've got people working on this, and you just overlook something that is so important, and you lead the county, the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, and you actually say you have a contract. So my concern is whether we have development coming or not coming, we have a developer who has basically misled us for quite a few meetings, quite a few months. And so I question the honesty of the developer, I might say. And that leaves me with great disdain. It would have been very simple to change those proffers to say we are working on an agreement, we in good faith, we think we'll have an agreement, but to actually say we have a contract in place when they know darn well they do not have a contract in place really leads me to think that I cannot support it just on that, the point of dishonesty is the way I look at it. So that would be my only comment. And I understand that they now have a land transfer agreement in place, and they say, well, we're still working towards the contract. But the point is they actually stated in front of us, they put it in their proffers in writing, they had a contract when they know they did not have a contract. And the dishonesty concerns me, I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Gabbard. Mars?
Well, I wasn't in support of this project the last time, but I agree with Mr. Gabbro. It's not an error or an omission. It's adding something in that's not there. Just simply wasn't there. When you look at the Berkeley Group numbers, $21,000 was their number with a lot of, they're skewing what those numbers can go up or down, and you're saying, okay, it's basically a net even. I don't think personally we would take a project this size on knowing that there's a $21,000 swing for the county. So I'm still not in favor of it. I think for folks who are yes, they need to decide whether they can overcome the difference in the proffer statement. When you have a project like this, there's a lot of things that happen. You have building inspectors come in and everything like that. You don't know what happens in between. And I'm concerned and I can't support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Madison.
So I was back and forth throughout, and the last time I wasn't in support either. My opinion hasn't changed tonight. I've had tremendous amount of inputs from community citizens. And just tonight, we had one in favor. I too appreciate the rural footprint. I understand that growth will happen. I think this is a minimum to what we deserve. I don't think that the benefit to King George at this point is sufficient with a project of this size and stature. I can't put my hands around what affordable housing is presented in this project. I know we need it. But I don't know that this is it. We hear that it is. There are a lot of concerns that I still have that I had the last time I was against it, and I don't think my opinion has changed tonight.
Thank you. Mr. DeVries?
First of all, I do want to put on the record, I'm grateful to Mr. Granger and the Board of Supervisors for sending this back to us for reconsideration. I think that was the right thing to do. As far as this medical facility goes, the only thing that really the only language that belongs in this proffer is that the property will be rezoned to C2 medical. As Mr. Britton stated, nothing else is enforceable. And it's basically meaningless as far as a proffer to this county. I did vote in favor of this last time around. I never really considered the medical facility as the number one plus that led to that vote. I think my vote was basically based upon the benefits to the Service Authority and Perkins Corner wastewater treatment, and the provision of median income housing in the county, which is a need that's been stated many times, not on this project, but in general over the county. That's been stated. Now, of course, that's an ambiguous, a fuzzy term, if you will. Nobody knows what it is, how to define median income housing or affordable housing, but based on an educated guess, just from the fact that it is not an A2 cluster, it's not going to sell for $385,000. That is the fee simple portion of the project. I never thought it was a good project. It's not pretty. It's always been ugly, even after we worked and worked to get it to, as Ms. Pattison said, this minimal standard that it finally ended up at. So again, my yay vote last time was based on benefits to Perkins Corner, which is a very serious problem. I believe we're still under the gun with DEQ on decommissioning, and that's going to have to be done. It's a very serious problem. That's all I've got. I'm still persuadable.
Mr. Kendrick, do you have any further?
Not really. Like I said, I just don't believe this is in the best interest of the county. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. DeCorda?
Is the existing inventory of R3 in our plan inadequate to support a siting decision for a high-density housing development in the areas the plan designated for thing? I mean, is there a shortage of C3? My objection is principally on the basis of converting A2 to C3 in the absence of a compelling reason to do so. And I would also like to echo the imperative for entry-level affordable housing, both for our residents and the young professionals we seek to bring in under the military overlay district in Dahlgren. I know that's not the objective of this current proposal, but it's just a reminder of how best to serve those we serve. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams?
Well, back in February, I voted, I'll go on record, I voted in support of the plan, simply because the plan fell into our comprehensive plan, for the county comprehensive plan. I understand that you can't enforce a third party involvement. You simply cannot. And I'll go on record to say I think that Herrnstein has acted in these 2 years of these procedures, have acted in good faith in our recommendations of each change that we come up with. If I can recall back in February, it was like each draft that they come up with, we make a recommendation, they go back and they come back to us with those recommendations of changes. I would like to hear from them as far as what our colleague was saying about them acting out of good faith, not in good faith, but out of good faith, to see, get an explanation as to if that is true, or if there's an explanation as to say how that could, I don't know. It wasn't meant to be deceptive, but perhaps how we see it as that way. Is there an explanation for it? I'd like to hear that to help me come to my decision. But yeah, I'm on the fence now. I'm on the fence. So, that's all I have.
Mr. Williams, would you like to ask the question of the developer?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Ernstein?
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. Can certainly appreciate everyone's concern, and don't appreciate being called dishonest or a liar, because that's not at all what the intention was, and that's not what happened here. I don't think anybody has enough information and has been involved with the process as much as we have to make that accusation, and I think to do so is irresponsible. There was a development agreement that was signed with Mary Washington Hospital all the way back in the beginning of 2018 and 2019 before I was involved in this project. I wasn't involved until July, I believe, of 2019. And when I came on board, I think my client is a blue collar guy. He doesn't have a law degree, and I did a poor job of quarterbacking it, to be quite honest with you, and should have had my hands around the information more. And I believe to my client, when he had a development agreement with Mary Washington Hospital that was signed, and Mary Washington Hospital continued to support and agree that they were going to, do this project, and told him that, and continued to show up to meetings and say they were going to do it to the Planning Commission. To my client, that meant he had to deal with Mary Washington. And I believe, there, in his mind, and, maybe even legally, there was a deal. There was a verbal agreement. Was it a good deal? Was it an enforceable deal? Was it enforceable from the county's perspective? No. Did we do a poor job, saying that to the county? Yes, we did. Was it dishonest intentionally on my client's part? I honestly believe it was not. There was never an intent to deceive here. And the fact of the matter is that, Mr. Britton pointed out that the key thing here is, and always has been, whether or not the county can enforce the agreement. And if you look at
If you look at the proffers, and I said this at the Board of Supervisors meeting, I said, if you read that entire proffer 3A, and this is not me trying to, escape, any type of blame for having not caught that poor wording in those proffers. But if you read that entire 3A, it goes on to talk about if the hospital doesn't take the property, we will donate the property to the county and we will give the county $500,000. So if you read that whole paragraph, you cannot walk away from that thinking that there was an absolute guarantee that the emergency room or the urgent care facility was going to be built. And I think that is indicative that there was no intent to deceive. Again, poorly worded, could have been worded better, absolutely. Was there an intent to deceive? Absolutely not, because you can't be a reasonable person and read that paragraph and think we were saying that there was absolutely 100% going to be an urgent care facility built. You can't read it that way. It would be impossible and totally unreasonable to do so. Secondly, on October 22nd, Mr. DeVries raised the issue in a letter and an email to the entire Planning Commission. He said, hey, I don't think 3A is enforceable. And he sent that to everyone. And he said, I don't believe this is enforceable. At the November 12th, 2019 meeting, Mr. Myers had a lengthy exchange with Kevin Gregory, the then county attorney, and I have the actual minutes here that, I don't know if it's an actual quote, but it says basically, to the extent it says that Mr. Myers essentially asks, Mr. Myers inquired about 3A, the MWH facility. Mr. Myers stated this is not for the county, but for MWH. If the builder wanted to back out of this deal, they could, because it is a profit outside the county. Mr. Gregory, the former county attorney, stated that Mr. Myers was correct. In reference to 3A, it is not profit for the county, and it is not enforceable like an ordinance. So again, I don't think there's been any attempt to deceive, and I actually think this commission was well aware that that was not an enforceable proffer from early in this process, almost a year ago, since October 22nd, when Mr. DeVries brought up the issue, and at least at the November 12th, 2019 meeting, when Mr. Myers and the county attorney had an exchange at a public hearing, similar to this one, except there was more people there. And so, again, was it a lack of understanding, and was it in making an assumption, and was it on my client's part that shouldn't have been made? Was it poor quarterbacking on my part for not having my arms around every aspect of this transaction from the moment I got in? Yes, it was. Was it intent to be deceitful? Absolutely, 100% it wasn't. And I resent anyone who says it was. Thank you very much.
Can I clarify the record, Mr. Parker?
Sure.
I did make that comment. I sent that comment to the Department of Community Development. I fully understood that it would be shared. I did not broadcast it to everyone, as Mr. Davis suggested. That would have violated our public meeting rule.
Thank you.
Well, I would make a comment to Mr. Williams and to anybody else who wants to take it. When this developer, well, first, this developer is no rookie. He's done developments before. If he didn't understand that he didn't have an agreement, he should have. What he said to us was misleading. All right? And to me, it was way too attractive to generate the public opinion, a favorable public opinion, because there was a healthcare facility dangled in front of us, something that the residents of the county need. So for whatever reason, for whatever intent, it was misleading. And it's only here lately that I've heard any admission on the part of the developer that it was incorrect. So for whatever reason, we've labored for many months thinking there was an agreement, a contract. There wasn't. Now, we can explain it away however well we want to, or whichever way we want to, but this developer is no babe in the woods. It was way too of an appealing argument to make to us. That's where I have issues.
Mr. Williams, do you have any additional comments?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, again, my comment spoke for itself initially. I wanted to get an explanation. Thank you for standing and giving that explanation. You know, it's tough. It's tough in trying to decide the future of our county. We're just trying to do what we have been brought here to do. And we want what is best for our county. In saying that, we want your best foot forward. We want all honest. We want all, give us all the information that we needed so we can make the proper and the correct decision. So again, I appreciate you giving the explanation, and I will take that in consideration in my decision. Thank you.
Mr. Watkins? I'm sorry.
I was just going to agree with my colleague there. Reading the minutes from the Board of Supervisors meeting, I'm reading back what Chairperson Bender says. Whether it's intentionally misleading and dishonest, whatever you want to call it, words have meaning. And when you state in a proper statement, applicant currently has a contract with Mary Washington Healthcare, whether you read the entire paragraph in whole or you read part of the paragraph, those words in that statement have meaning when they say we have a contract and they did not have a contract. So whether they want to say it was an oversight, they didn't mean to be misleading, it is misleading. And and like I say, I tend to agree with Chairperson Bender. Those words have meaning. So when you tell somebody you have something in place and you do not have it in place, no matter what you want to call it, it is a misleading statement to say so. And I appreciate that Mr. Landon may not like my comments, but I still feel as though we were intentionally misled. It's gone on for months. It's not the first proper statement. They've revised it several times. They certainly could have altered those words before they continued with those words in the proper statement. And it was on them to change them, not on us to find out that they were not correct.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Let's finish around the table real quick, Mr. Watkins.
Back in February, I voted in favor of the project. Like, Mr. Williams here, the project fit within our comprehensive plan. Plan that, most of y'all worked on for quite a while. It fits within the, economic growth of the county, where we want it to be. Now with them having a contract, not having a contract with Mary Washington, that kind of does put a good sized dent in the project. But now, the way it reads now is that now the developer has to build a medical facility. Maybe that should have been in there before without saying that they had a contract. Maybe it was a handshake deal, word of mouth, and the Mary Washington people, representatives were here at the meeting. They're saying, yeah, we're ready to go. Even they were saying or acting like they had a contract with the developer. As soon as it's built, they're ready to move in. Maybe Mary Washington did a little bit of deception too, with the county, with the developer. Like everybody's been saying, the county's going to grow. Is this going to be the gold standard for, large developments coming in? Probably not. I think other developers are looking at this development saying, are we willing to come to King George and put up with, what the developers had to put up with? The background having to change everything, with it fitting within the comprehensive plan. It's just, is this development setting a precedent for any other development wanting to come
to the county. That's what I'm kind of looking at, because I know a lot of people learned a lesson from Hop Yard. Different things went bad with that one. So I wasn't involved with those, so I can't speak on that. But I still believe that this, development fits within the economic and the comprehensive plan that the county went through, and it's going to meet the needs that the county is going to need further down the road, because the county is going to grow. As soon as the bridge opens up, the county is going to grow. You go down 301, all those property signs that were for sale, they now say sold on them. The property is getting eaten up, so the county is going to grow. So I'm still in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. All that said, I think one of the bigger picture issues for me is the just level of confidence. I mean, we've spent a year now just here trying to inch a minimally acceptable proposal over the line. And we've said this a lot of times, the second largest rezoning we've had in modern history. I'd like a little bit more confidence that it would be smoother than this in all stages. And this has been a lot of work. There's been a lot of things that have been caught on the county side, countless hours of county staff time put into it. I think there's a lack of confidence. And going back to the exchange with Mr. Myers, I think I recall that vividly, and I remember that the premise under that was we were still going under assumption that there's a contract. I think those things could change a little when you have, when you don't actually have a contract. I don't know how you could think you have a contract and you don't. I don't think I'm married. I know I'm married. You were there. she came. It's like there's certain things that you just, you just know or you don't know. And I guess I'm still kind of wrapped around the axle about that. And it just doesn't seem, I don't know. It's a lack of confidence, I feel.
I had two questions for Mr. Landon, if he could, please. Or Mr. Davis, sorry, Landon Davis, sorry.
You can call me Landon if you'd like to.
On this, and it says applicant currently has a contract with Mary Washington Healthcare whereby has agreed to build up to 14,300 square foot medical facility in Land Bay A. That's pretty specific. That was all verbal?
Are you talking about the current proffers, or are you still on the old?
The proffers before, when we had it. That was just all verbal to the 14,300 square foot level.
There was, my client had the dealings with Mary Washington Hospital. I'm not sure exactly, the GDP calls for an up to 14,300 square foot facility. And it mirrors the facility in Fredericksburg, which, I guess they had planned to.
Okay, but I guess my question was, that was all verbal? There was no written contract at all?
Well, no, again, there was a development agreement that was entered in 2019 on the other piece of property. And again, I think that, the thing is, for someone to say that Mary Washington is, coming here to be deceitful, they're $1 billion company, right? I don't think they're going to come up here and lie for Daryl Hertenstein. And again, what I would just reiterate is that, I take full responsibility and understand that it could have been worded better, should have been worded better, but there wasn't an intent to deceive on my client's part. And, we fixed the problem with the latest round of proffers.
Okay, and my second question was, as his attorney, you never asked him for that contract in this? We had multiple revisions of the proffer. You never asked him to hey, can you give me the contract or can I see it or anything?
Yeah, again, and I guess that goes back to myself taking responsibility for not being a better quarterback. I stepped into this process kind of in the middle of it after it had already kind of hit a couple rough patches, and my goal was to take some proffers that had already been drafted and work with the county attorney, Mr. Gregory, to fix them. And my client had, I talked with him about the proffers and everything like that, and believe me, that was a very good lesson. And I remember, I think it was Mr. Gregory at the time said, "Hey, we're hearing that there isn't an agreement." I said, "That's ridiculous. I'll call and I'll get it." And then I learned of the miscommunication or whatever it was, and we immediately moved to fix it. And again, could have been handled better in numerous respects, especially with the benefit of hindsight. And but there wasn't an intent to deceive on our part, and I'd stand by that statement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Me?
I've been struggling with it, but what I don't want to do is have, my judgment clouded by one thing, which is this agreement, the contract. It wasn't, when we talk about some of the benefits of the county, we're still going to have to incur the cost of replacing Perkins Corner with or without this. And that's a big number. So, with that, and there has been a lot of work into this on both parties, on the county side, on their side. I'm still struggling with it, but I think it'll probably be a lost cause, but I'm going to still support it.
I have a question for staff on proffer number 6. May I speak again?
I'm sorry, Mr. DeVries, I can't hear you.
Do you mind?
No, Mr. Bryce had a question about proffer number 6.
Ms. Hall, on proffer number 6, and if you want to defer, I note that Mr. Ferrugi, the applicant's engineer, is here. If you want to defer to him on this, that's fine. I'm not sure exactly how proffer 6 has changed. This is related to the median crossing on Kings Highway. The cover under approved rezoning application states that there is not an assurance that a crossover will be provided at Route 3, so proffer 6 has been amended to address this. Seems to have something to do with the required spacing between median cuts. Is that true?
Yes, if you remember in our previous meetings, we discussed some of the hurdles that the applicant had as far as putting in a full crossover because of the spacing. Of course, I'm going strictly from memory here. It's been a long time, but essentially they cannot guarantee that that full crossover will be put in because it requires a waiver. But they have guaranteed that they will at least apply for that waiver, and at minimum.
Now, when you say a full crossover, it seems to be limited here. The way the proffer is written is to a left out problem. The problem is with the left out. Wouldn't that also include the left in from eastbound Route 3, left into the project, into the site area? I mean, is there a distinction between a full crossover and a partial crossover as far as the separation requirements go?
Right. So if you look further down on E, it says which applicant shall include a request for an access management spacing waiver allowing the left out option from the property to the eastbound Route 3 lane. In the event said request is granted, applicant proffers that it will construct said entrance as approved by VDOT. Applicant further proffers and agrees that prior to the submission of the said request, applicant will consult with VDOT and applicable professionals to determine the location, design, and structure of the entrance. which will have the greatest likelihood of approval. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained herein, the applicant shall be required to submit a plan to VDOT in connection with the request, which would require any extraordinary action on behalf of the applicant to secure approval, such as construction of a tunnel, overpass, or bridge.
Did you understand my question about the left turn into the site from Kings Highway? Mr. Ferrugi's coming up if you want to defer.
Good evening, members of the commission. Ryan Ferrugi, engineer for the applicant. Yes, there is actually a distinction in VDOT that requires difference between a full entrance and a non-full entrance, and it is the left out.
Okay.
So there is actually a clear distinction between partial, full, and full is the left movement out.
Okay, so the left turn into the site is not subject to these separation requirements?
Correct. It would still be defined technically as a partial entrance.
So we can consider your GDP to be basically a commitment to build those left turn in lanes, correct?
As long as, to Heather's point, the reason that we're having, it's the applicant's intent to have a full crossover there. I mean, that's the applicant's intent. I think the county would like the crossover to be there. The problem is that this is because of the corridor, Route 3, the guarantee of that crossover is not resided locally. It's taken down to Richmond. And so there's just not an absolute guarantee. I think if it was locally administered with Chad or Mr. Gagnon or David Beal, I think that there would be, I think we'd have almost absolute confidence that we'd have a crossover. But we just don't know what Richmond thinks with all of the other improvements that are being done in the area around this project. So that's why we had to word this in such a way. But it is absolutely the applicant's intent to build that full crossover.
Right, and if he is not able to build that full crossover, my concern is, will there still be left turn lanes into the...
I believe so, yes. That would still be the intent, yes. We just wouldn't have the left out.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no further discussion, I think we're probably at that point in the evening where we can put this up for a vote. Unless there's further discussion, at which point we can engage in that. So the motion before us, if somebody chooses to make it, is to forward this along to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval.
I'll make the motion if you like. I move that we forward rezoning application case number 19-03-Z02 to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? Aye. Opposed? Five split. It's 5-5-5. So 5-5. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
was that a question?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how to.
Tie vote to failure.
5-5, tie vote to failure? Any tie vote, okay.
Motion is made to forward it with denial, and it's split, that fails too. We should probably go through the motion.
I mean, it will be passed on by law to the Board of Supervisors, and it was not, and the motion to approve was denied.
Correct. I'm not sure we can make a motion.
Right? Yeah. The, anyone who did not make the motion for approval could make a motion for denial. It would be redundant, and it would possibly come up with a different vote. You'd have neither would pass, but a tie vote fails. Typically, you make a motion to approve.
Correct.
And it's either up or down. But if you wanted to make the motion to send it to the Board of Supervisors with a denial, you could do that as long as it's not a person who made the original motion or voted for approval.
Wouldn't we be kind of coming up with the same outcome?
Hopefully.
But would that?
It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's not necessary, but if we did that, would that have any procedural issues that would subject us to litigation or anything?
No, motion was made and properly seconded and voted on, and there was no majority vote, so it dies a natural death. I'm not sure I'm following the intent, but the motion, you had a motion for approval and it didn't pass.
Yeah.
It's going to go to the Planning Commission that way. I mean, from the Planning Commission that way. Now I'm getting confused. To the Board of Supervisors, I meant to say. From the Planning Commission, you.
Can it be forwarded with explanation that it was a split?
Oh, yes, they get the transcript of record. So they get the actual vote. This is an enrolled vote, and they'll know who voted for it, and they'll get a transcript of this entire record. And Ms. Hall will update the staff. She just was saying to me she'll also update the staff report as it goes to the board.
Okay. So we have voted, and motion does not pass. So for that point, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is old business. I don't believe we have any old business this evening. All right, so the next agenda item is new business, which we have none of, and then we will go on to the director's report.
So you may notice that our director's report looks a little different this month. One of the things that I was asked as the new director of community development was to revamp the director's report, both mostly for the Board of Supervisors, but I wanted to keep the same information for you as well. So take note that all permit totals and reporting may be 1 to 2 months behind, given the closeout of that month and the timing of your meeting or the board's meeting. But we did give you updates. Mr. Hudson will officially retire October 30th after 20 years of service. And upon his retirement, I've been named the new Director of Community Development.
Congratulations. We didn't know that.
Thank you. We also discussed that we've been operating daily during COVID-19. We continue to take applications. All of our training is listed, as well as our current staff. The next page also talks about our August permit intakes. It will also give you some stats from previous years. We also talk about our inspections, our water and sewer connections, as well as our current applications or under construction for commercial building projects, major subdivisions, current rezoning requests, and special exception applications, and what's on the Board of Supervisors agenda. And as always, I included the zoning practice for your reading leisure.
Thank you. We need to get the name and address of the people who are getting the new pools so that we can go inspect those personally.
You know, you would not believe the amount of pools we've done this year. Like, there's a waiting list over a year long.
Wow.
Over a year long. Like, you can't even get somebody to come out and give you an estimate right now for a pool. Pools, decks, finished basements,
Crazy.
all the, I guess, quarantine improvements. Our stats are out of the roof. We are slam busy.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Ms. Hall.
Thank you very much.
And, and Mr. Hudson, again, we are sad to see you go. I know, he's been sitting there for the last 3 hours, 3.5 hours going, man. Man. They weren't. Carla worked them.
We never had to put it in our bylaws until this past year.
I know. Oh, thank you, Heather. Other business?
No other business.
No other business. That leads us to the highlight of the evening. There we go. Motion's been made. Seconded. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Everybody have a great evening. Safe weekend.